We'll start with roll call, please.
Kevin Boyles.
Here.
Michelle Brecken.
Here.
DJ Donlinger.
Here.
Randy Heidman.
Here.
Sarah Spear.
Here.
John Ward.
Here.
All present.
Thank you. We're going to depart from procedure just a little bit tonight before we do the Pledge of Allegiance. It's my understanding that we had a stellar applicant for a staff position within the district, and I'd like to bring that individual forward so the board can ask a few questions, if that's okay. Is there a Dylan Pakula in the facility tonight? Mr. Pakula, would you be so kind as to come down here, please?
So Director Boyles, if I can, I received a video last Friday.
You can sit down if you want to, Dylan. Right over there, it's fine. Wherever you want.
And I just thought it was important that you see, so we've been talking about teacher recruitment retention, and this video came to me Friday from a nice young man wanting to apply. So if you can play his video.
Good morning, Dr. If you could find time I could talk to you, could you please, I want this staff at 8:74.
So I thought it was important that you meet this young man.
Well,
Good
clearly,
job.
yeah, you're pretty much overqualified, but we're going to talk to you anyway. And part of that overqualification is, you know, we don't normally talk to people that are 7 or younger, but that 3/4 is a big deal. Yeah. So it's good to know that you're here. So I did talk to some of these other people here on the school board, and we briefly discussed bringing you on as the assistant superintendent. But as it turns out, we have some budget problems, so we're really not able to do that right now. So we thought, if it was okay with you, what we would do is we would hire you for this evening to take on a very important task for this meeting. Does that sound like something you'd be interested in doing? It's a very critical part of every school board meeting that we do, and we really need your help with it. Sound good?
Yeah.
All right. If I may, from the board, this is not an official vote, so we won't have a motion, but would all those in favor of Dylan assisting us in the Pledge of Allegiance tonight that are in favor of that, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? All right, you're on the hook now, my man. So first order of business, I need you to come forward. We have your staff badge. So there you are. All right, so we have a flag right here. You want to turn and you want to get us started on the Pledge of Allegiance? Would everybody please join us, please? And whenever you're ready.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Riverside Elementary School creates positive relationships by being respectful and responsible to ourselves and others.
Nice. Good job, Dylan.
That's cool.
All right, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Nice try.
Good job, Dylan. All right, now, onward and upward. Dylan, at any point you want to jump in and take this chair spot, you just raise your hand and we'll see what we can do. Sound good? Also, if I can editorialize, it's nice to see so many faces out in the crowd tonight. It's been a while since we've had that much non-staff at a school board meeting. It's always energizing to see people from the community out here. It helps us when we're doing these meetings. So thanks for coming, whatever you're here for, we appreciate it. So we'll move on to the approval of the agenda as presented. I do not believe this was amended.
Correct.
Correct.
Motion.
Second.
We have a motion by Director Donnelly, a second by Director Spear. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, onward to recognitions for this evening. Okay, we're going to split this one up. Director Heidman, we'll start down at your end if you want to take that first section, and then we'll just go board member to board member and run through these recognitions, if that's okay.
Yeah. Congratulations to the 2 Brainerd Knowledge Bowl teams. Over 1,000 teams originally competed and 48 were selected to compete for the state championship. Brainerd had 2 teams selected. There was only one other district that had 2 teams selected. Brainerd was placed in the triple A division and competed against schools with larger student populations. Brainerd Blue Team finished 15th in the state and consisted of sophomore Sam Simpson, Amelia Kozert, Jagger Klektaski,
Oh, Klikatsky.
Sasha Lytle, and freshman Paul Sandberg. The Brainerd White Team finished 18th in the state and consisted of seniors Sam Matson and Tristan Arndt, with sophomores Christy Moore and freshman Hattie Dunnick and Arabella Bozen.
Congratulations to the Brainerd speech team. Is that correct, Director Boyle?
Yep, correct.
Okay, because that's different on my agenda here.
Nope, you're good.
Okay, correct. Congratulations to the Brainerd speech team at the Section 8 AA tournament last week at Forest View Middle School. Finishing in third place and advancing to the state tournament on April 28th are seniors Caddy Porish and in Creative Expression and Max Johnson Ding and Jaylee Andreessen in duo. Max Johnson Ding and Jaylee Andreessen won a medal at the state tournament. They placed 8th in the duo. Katie Porish narrowly missed the mark to qualify for the finals. Finishing in 7th place were Fern French and Lydia Redepenning in Creative Expression and Discussion, respectively. Finishing in 8th place were Abigail Smith and Haley Petrie duo.
And congratulations to the Brainerd area future problem solvers for being the Minnesota State champions. 7 students will be representing Minnesota in the international competition at the University of Massachusetts Amherst in June. They'll compete with other students from 37 states and 14 countries. The topic will be currency. The students are Scarlett Anderson, Owen Barnes, Callista Anderson, Justice Anderson, Isaac Matson, Tucker Hansen, and Samuel Sandberg.
Congratulations to the BHS Key Club for winning the following annual awards at the district convention. 3rd place in the Silver Division for Achievement Award, which is a year-long achievement. 2nd place in Major Emphasis Award, Warrior Day of Service Work, Toys and Blankets for Heart. Packing Food with Outreach Program, bringing in a speaker for Minnesota Towards Zero Deaths, and Polar Plunge Special Olympics. 2nd place, Silver Division in the Single Service category for the Senior Center Service Work, and 1st place in Traditional Scrapbook, and they won the Club Newsletter Award.
Well, congratulations to the Brainerd Robotics team members for earning all academic honors. These students had a 3.9 grade point average or higher. Will Adlin, Haley Nelson, Drake Small, Evan DeBoer, Isaac Hansen, Owen Brainerd, Abby Brainerd, Micah Halbersma, Jane Jacoby, Cole Benton, Ethan Dede, Ewan, this poor guy's got a last name like mine, Vogelsang, and August Vogelsang. Good job.
Congratulations to the Sourcewell Leader of Excellence and Educators of Excellence. Leader of Excellence, Dr. Tammy Stelmack, Baxter Principal. Educators of Excellence, Casey Barrett, Baxter Elementary Teacher, Jessica Johnson, Lowell Elementary Teacher, Katie Kraft, BHS Teacher, Heather Larson, Garfield Elementary Teacher, Lisa Miller, Nisswa Elementary Teacher, Tracy Riley, LEC Teacher, and Marty Sauer, Harrison Elementary Teacher. They were all honored Wednesday, May 3rd, 2023, at a reception hosted by Sourcewell at the Gitche Zeebe Center for the Arts.
Congratulations to Isabel Roscott, BHS Senior, for being awarded the Minnesota FFA State Degree. It is a top honor an FFA member can receive on the state level. Her supervised agriculture experience, SAE, was working at Fleet Farm.
Congratulations to the Brainerd Dispatch Design and Ad winners from Nisswa, Maddox Miles and Bailey Vanderarty.
Congratulations to all the 2023 outstanding seniors who received scholarships Wednesday, May 3rd, 2023. $180,000 worth of scholarships were awarded to graduating seniors from the class of 2023.
Congratulations to the Nisswa April Character Counts winners. They've all shown great character and creativity. Nelson Walter, Sonia Hansen, William Johnson, Weston Snyders, Flint Johnson, Gage Bible, Jackson Kuhn, Sophia Szymanski, Kennedy Sanala, Ava Grams, Cora Parks, Gunnar Bible, Bernita Morsch, Landon Walton, Nevea Karner, Breck Rosie, Caitlin Grusecka, Joss Meyerdinger, Sawyer Lemkool, Everett Gromer, Tressa Hedman, Connor Tweed, Eli Kern, and Sylvie Lee. And I'm sure I got some of their names wrong, so now they've got new ways to pronounce them. Congratulations.
And that's why you notice as chair, I timed this so that the two that I read have nobody's names in them. So I guess up next is congratulations to all the district writing contest winners. Awards will be handed out at the awards ceremony being held May 30th at Forest View Middle School. Categories include poetry, short stories, fiction, and nonfiction. The top 3 winners in each category for grades kindergarten through 12th grade will be honored.
Congratulations to Brenna Deason and Gavin Holzel for being named the 23 Brainerd Female and Male Athletes of the Year. Congratulations to all the scholar athletes honored at the All Sports Banquet Monday, May 1st.
Congratulations to Cameron Anderson and Ellen Germanson for winning first place in the Escape the Vape video contest. They won $250 each, along with Forest View Middle School. Third place winners were Ryan Larson, Annabelle Holcomb Smith, and Henry Olson. Thank you to Tanya Dill, 8th grade language arts teacher, for overseeing the project. Escape the Vape is a PSA video contest where Minnesota 6th through 12th graders can use their voice to raise awareness about the dangers of vaping and expose the shadowy commercial tobacco marketing tactics behind it.
And congratulations to Fine Arts Students of the Week. April 10th, Peyton Freeman for photography. April 17th, Liz Sarvey for decoy design. And May 1st, Lydia Redepenning for theater. And then also, if you haven't got your dispatch, here are 70 seniors that are awardees of the 22-23 Fine Arts Scholar. So there's nice color photos of them. And just so you know, at the scholarship banquet, when somebody mispronounced a name, they were told they could collect a prize. So I'll re-announce that if your name was mispronounced, seek out the school board, though. They'll make sure you get a prize for that.
Such a fun time of year. Does it count if I see Dr. Stelmach, your name's spelled wrong, maybe you're eligible for a prize too. Anyway, it's fun to get all of these at the end of the year like this, where they come in bunches like this. Very, very, very neat to see all the achievements of our kids.
Mr. Chair.
All right. Yes, Dr. Hyden.
Just a shout out at the All Sports Banquet. Coach Shane Jordan spoke for 53 straight minutes announcing all of the bios of all the student athletes. And that was quite a feat.
He did a good job.
Yeah, he's good at that.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay, moving along, then up next is public input. I have 2. Is there any other public input? If you do, you have time to fill out a card and bring it over to me if you wish. In the meantime, Marty Halverson, if you could please come forward.
My name's Marty Halverson. I know there's been considerable conversation about LGBTQIA+ recently, and I received a letter that I thought was important to share with you. It's relative also to education. And this letter was written by the presiding bishop, Elizabeth Eaton of the ELCA, Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, which is the largest Lutheran denomination with over 3 million people. She writes, as we approach March 31st, many people are preparing to recognize Transgender Day of Visibility, an international day to celebrate the contributions of transgender people and raise awareness about the deadly injustices that they face. As bishop of this church, I am concerned that the rights of transgender and non-binary Americans have been targeted all over the nation. Nearly 400 anti-LGBTQIA+ bills were introduced across the United States in 2022, most of them targeting transgender youth. That is twice the number from 2021 and almost 8 times the total from 2020. The language in many of these bills attacks the humanity of trans and non-binary people, often erasing the dignity that should be afforded to everyone. While members of our church hold various convictions regarding gender, the teaching of our church supports legislation and policies to protect every person's human dignity and civil rights. As Christians, we believe every human being is created in God's image, and we must honor and celebrate God's creation. Our church teaches that we affirm transgender and non-binary siblings are God's children who are loved unconditionally. Our social statement, Faith, Sexism, and Justice, a call to action from 2019, also declares that this church commits itself to advocate for and support laws, policies, and practices that respect diverse bodies rather than discriminating against, objectifying, or devaluing them. I urge us as people of faith to love our neighbors, care for the vulnerable and marginalized, and work for justice and equality. We may differ on our opinions on matters related to sexual orientation and gender identity, but we must always uphold the dignity and humanity of everyone. These disagreements do not allow us to accept actions that dehumanize, discriminate against, or objectify any individual or group. We must stand together, dear church, faithfully advocating for the full humanity and dignity of all people. Let us recognize and affirm the humanity of our transgender and non-binary siblings. Let us advocate for their dignity. Let us continue to be guided by God's love and compassion as we seek justice and equality for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Froelich.
Thank you. My name's Terry Froelich, and I'd like to share a brief anecdote from my high school years. This is the 60th anniversary of the graduation of high school back at Edison High School, Northeast Minneapolis. I want to talk about just one teacher who made a difference. It was an average day in school. We walked into our classroom, German class. Teacher was Edna Sorensen. She'd been there forever, and she had this amazing command of respect. But we were talking and we were chattering and we were having a great time as students moving into this classroom and blah, 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 chatter, chatter. The bell rang and we kept, blah, 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 blah. All of a sudden, Miss Sorensen said, "What makes you think you have the right to be happy?" And everybody was just silent. And then she had this huge smile. And she said, "Please open your workbook to page whatever, wherever." And we went on with our class. But what an amazing statement. School boards don't have the responsibility to make students happy, but you have the responsibility to hire teachers like Edna Sorensen, who not only know the subject, but they know the goal, and they challenge students. And I just thank you for being the anchors of those teachers who come and give a tremendous amount of wisdom to students, which pays off into happiness down the road. Thank you very much.
All right, that concludes public comment. We'll move on to the approval of the regular school board meetings minutes from the April 10th meeting, please.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion from Director Ward with a second by Director Dondelinger to approve. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next up on the agenda is the consent calendar with the hires approved and pending negotiated contracts and agreements with district-approved acceptable background checks.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Now second?
Okay, we have a motion by Director Spear with a second by Director Brecken to approve. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries, consent calendar is approved. We'll move on to presentations. I believe we have Mrs. Harmer and a student, Rio, to do a presentation for us.
He's going to help me get it set up. And no, you'll be presenting to everyone. Yep. Okay, hi, I'm Nicole Harmer, and behind me here is Rio Neifert, who's one of my star students from my AP seminar class. Some of you board members have been lucky enough to be able to see some of the presentations that Rio is actually going to be showcasing for you tonight. This is part of the AP Capstone program at Brainerd High School. We are in our seventh year of that program. At the time when we started it in 2017, 2018, we were only one of 5 schools that had started AP Capstone in the state of Minnesota. There are now only 23 high schools in our state that offer this program. But it is an innovative program that comprised of 2 courses, AP Seminar, which is the course that I currently teach, as well as AP Research. And students who complete both of those courses do receive an additional recognition from the AP College Board program with something called the AP Capstone Diploma. So it puts them in this upper echelon of students nationwide in which students are learning to develop critical thinking, research, collaboration, presentation, argumentative, and time management and presentation skills, not only needed for college coursework, but also for their careers. So a lot of my students tend to be also very STEM focused. It's a way for them to get some of the technical writing and reading and presentation skills that they need. And Rio recently presented her, we call it an individual multimedia report, on a specific topic of her choice, in which she presented her argument and was part of her AP exam. So this was actually part of something that she will submit to the College Board for her score to try to get college credit for this course. And did such a phenomenal job that Dr. Hahn asked if we would showcase Rio's work here today. So we will be presenting that for you.
Thank you.
Okay. Here's your clicker, make sure it's all working. Take it away.
My research question.
Can you get that to?
Oh, I didn't see it. Sorry. My research question was, how can schools best improve their students' mental health? Adolescents generally have worse mental health than adults. An example of this can be seen in the graph that I created from Ike et al. As shown in Australia, a startling 84% of university students reported experiencing elevated levels of psychological distress, which is a common measure of mental well-being, while only 29% of the total population reported such levels. This higher rate in adolescence is important because, according to Kitzrow, a psychologist, students with poor mental health struggle more academically, are more stressed, and are more likely to give up when they are challenged. Resilience is most commonly defined as the ability to adapt to adversity. According to Bastaminia et al., resilient people are better problem solvers and better at navigating social situations. They are also less depressed and anxious. Resilience programs, such as Sources of Strength, improve students' mental health by teaching them how to be resilient. And resilience programs, once established, can easily spread to other schools. For example, this map shows how Sources of Strength has spread throughout the United States and Canada during its 24 years of existence. The dark purple shows already established programs, the light purple shows where a program is being established, and the black shows where there is no program. Adult advisors and peer leaders often teach resilience because they have pre-existing relationships with students. These relationships help students learn resilience by ensuring ensuring that they feel supported. Also, Sources of Strength provides its advisors and leaders with mental health training. Other resilience programs could use this same model to train their advisors and develop a sense of community within their school. According to researchers at the University of Brighton, Hart and Heaver, some of the best methods of teaching resilience are through activities in which students practice problem solving, use teamwork, or build community. One of the most significant threats to students' mental health is bullying. According to Moore and Woodcock, researchers at Macquarie University, bullied students are both more depressed and less happy than their peers, which can leave a lasting impact even after bullying stops. Resilience programs that promote optimism, in addition to resilience, can reduce bullying. Optimism is a positive outlook on life. In his book, Long Walk to Freedom, Nelson Mandela discusses how optimism helped him maintain positivity while in prison. According to Colaroso, as cited in Gornow, all bullies tried to dominate their victims, similar to how the prison guards treated Mandela. Therefore, Mandela's experience with optimism is applicable to bullied students. Moore and Woodcock confirmed this connection between optimism and bullying. They found that optimistic students are less likely to be bullied as well as less anxious. This is likely because bullies generally prefer to target vulnerable students rather than happier, more optimistic ones. Hope is a belief in one's ability to achieve their goals. According to Lenz, a professor at the University of Mississippi, hopeful students experienced fewer symptoms of mental disorders and were more likely to form positive relationships. This is important because a survey of students aged 12 to 14 by Brown and Dixon revealed that students with good relationships and a welcoming community reported better mental health. So, resilience programs that promote hope would help to foster a positive school community. Unfortunately, there are limitations to resilience. When students have a negative attitude towards mental health, resilience is ineffective. Negative mental health attitudes refer to beliefs that mental health sufferers are weak, incompetent, and unable to take care of themselves. Students with these beliefs often feel shame for their mental health problems or persecute others for their issues, and are therefore unlikely to seek help for their problems. However, Kotera et al. Found that if students learn to be self-compassionate, they are more likely to improve their mental health, despite their negative attitudes. It's easier to teach self-compassion than it is to change a person's stigma against mental health. So self-compassion training should be a part of resilience programs. This once again demonstrates one of the best qualities of resilience programs. Despite the name, these programs are intended to teach students more than just resilience. By combining different traits such as hope and optimism, resilience programs offer students various strengths that they can draw on. For example, Sources of Strength is almost entirely built on this idea. This can be seen in the symbol for Sources of Strength, a wheel in which each section represents a different source of strength that students can use to maintain their well-being. Resilience isn't the only solution. According to Hart and Heaver, reducing inequalities, such as access to food, is one of the most effective ways to improve students' mental health. When students feel secure, it is easier for them to focus on their mental well-being. Unfortunately, issues such as food insecurity are often expensive and complicated, so they are best solved through larger state or national programs rather than by individual schools. They also only help students while they attend their school, while resilience is a skill that students carry with them through their entire lives. Counseling is another option. Kitzrow found that therapy decreases stress and makes it easier for students to learn, which helps to improve their mental health. However, it can be expensive. According to Psychology Today, in the United States, a single session of therapy typically costs between $100 and $200. Additionally, therapists don't have pre-existing relationships with students. While it's beneficial overall, resilience does have weaknesses. In The Dark Side of Resilience, Chamorro, Premuzic, and Lusk explain that some people are too resilient. They choose to suffer through difficult situations rather than change it. In other cases, resilience can be misinterpreted. According to Brown and Dixon's student survey, many students believed their mental health was their sole responsibility. They believed that if they weren't happy, it was because they weren't trying hard enough. They didn't know that sometimes resilience isn't enough. In addition to being taught how to be resilient, students must be taught when to be resilient and when to ask for help. In summary, resilience programs that teach multiple traits, such as resilience, hope, and optimism, and use adult advisors and peer leaders are the most effective. While they cannot solve every problem, resilience programs are cheap, adaptable, and easily spread to other areas. Most importantly, resilience programs help students quickly, allowing time for larger, more effective programs, such as free lunch for all students, to be developed.
Okay, so just to double check, were there any other questions that you had about her presentation tonight? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Nice job.
Well done.
Well done.
Thank you, Ms. Harmer. Okay, thank you.
Well, as I look ahead, I see we're almost done. We just have a little bit of new business today, and I think that we can call it a night. And we're going to start with the approval of the American Indian Parent Advisory Committee, APAC.
Oh,
Or did I skip the budget part? I did.
Skipping the budget.
Sorry,
Marcy's
presentation,
been working
budget
on
update.
this.
So we have one more presentation, then we have new business.
I'll go sit back
Unless you
down.
want to run away, Marcy, yeah, you can.
Yeah, I was going to say, I do have one request. Maybe I could go after the students next time.
Maybe after the budget update, we could have a resilience training.
Yeah, there you go. So in your board packet is a projected budget summary for next year. We've gone through this with the Finance Committee and several of you, but just want to give you a very brief overview. We start with the unassigned deficit of the $625,000. We put in what we are projecting for revenue, which is 2% on the Gen Ed formula. An increase in the compensatory aid. There is a decrease in the levy. Levy is tied to enrollment, which is why as our enrollment is going down, the levy is going to go down. And then also a decrease in the CARES funds. Some of those are ending this year. We do have other funds that are still going through 2024 of September. And then the projected increase in existing expenses, projections in salary and benefits, contracted transportation. You'll see later on tonight that agreement is on the agenda, debt payments, and then a decrease in the OPEB implicit subsidy. Cost savings from replacements, staff that are retiring, resigning. We put in estimates for what we could potentially get rehires, and that's the plug number for right now. That's going to continually change. I mean, tomorrow we could get a number of other resignations or retirements, so that don't hold me to that number. Proposed net expense adjustments, so some of the adjustments that we have in next year's budget, we can do through attrition, resignations, realignments, trying to reach class size targets as well as other reductions. That's the 305. So right now we're sitting at a projected unassigned deficit of about 1.5 million, which I want to point out is about 1.6% of our annual general fund expense budget. Then if you look at how will that play into what our current assigned fund balance is, we have a projected unassigned fund balance at the end of this year of $10,499,000. We take that into account, we'll be sitting at about 8.9, roughly 9 million in unassigned fund balance at the end of next year, or 9.64%. Again, another topic later on the agenda is discussing our fund balance policy and what you guys are comfortable with that. But that's right now where the projection is at. In all of that, like I said, it's a very brief overview, but you can see I have it broken down, positions added, certified, non-certified total, so we're adding 3.14. In there is some SPED additions, media, nurse, and then the WELC position that we are adding, principal is posted right now. And then the positions reduced, that is elementary sections, music, and SPED as well. And so with SPED, you know, as kids are moving around, you can see some transfers in between. They may be moving from an elementary to Forest View, et cetera. So I'm saying we're adding SPED and we're reducing SPED, it's because they're going between buildings, if that makes sense. Positions replaced, so right now there's 7, but like I said, that number could change as we go along. And then big asterisk down at the bottom, this is all subject to change based on Minnesota legislative actions. So May 22nd, this sheet could look totally different. But we kind of want to get this in front of you guys so that if there's any questions or concerns, you can let Heidi or myself know. And then the second page is just by site. It's that same positions added, positions reduced, but then you can see it's by district-wide, elementary, middle school, high school, BLC, LEC, early childhood, and the net amount of those.
So I can add to that. So when we started, I think March, we had conversations of this is kind of that 30,000 foot view at that time. And if you remember a year ago, we had projected a deficit spending of about 1.8. And you see how that deficit continues to go down. We budget very conservatively. This budget is being created on a 2% increase to the general formula. We know right now in legislation, there's talks of 5 and 4 and cross-subsidy aid, but there's also a lot of other unfunded mandates that may play in. So we went with a very conservative budget proposal. So that's what you're seeing is that conservative part. Where the deficit has increased slightly is we were looking at reducing 4 elementary sections. We've only reduced 2 because of those class sizes starting to bounce back up or those grade levels starting to bounce up. So that's the difference you're seeing from when we looked at early on in the year to where we're at right now. So we're very anxious to see how action comes to fruition. But right now, looks like great funding, but at the same point, there's a backside of unfunded mandates that if those come through, it could be a complete wash and then some. So lots happening in these next couple weeks.
So this is the same thing that we were looking at.
The only difference from when we met last time, DJ, is you've seen that the deficit has gone up slightly, and that's because instead of 4 elementary sections, we just reduced 2 based on number of students.
So your original projection was 625 in the ditch, and now we're at $1.5 million, right?
For 22-23, we're at 625. This is for 23-24.
Oh, actually, so you're taking that.
Yep.
That's what,
Rolling it over.
Yep.
But now last year,
Into
when
our
the
reserves.
same discussion last year, we are at 1.8. So now you see it down to 625. So that's we considered a balanced budget as long as it's in that 1 to 2%. And right now, we're sitting right at 1.6, so.
And for you new board members, then in June is when you would actually approve the budget. It would be presented at the June board meeting, and it has to be approved by the end of June, a budget. So.
Is there any
go ahead.
legislation that's going to be a budget buster?
There was. We calculated the $25 an hour, but that since went out. And then we calculated the 25 minutes for prep for teachers to 17. With all of them, it was around 7 million. Now we're looking at the unemployment, where the employer and the employee split the 0.7%, so it'd be 0.35. It's around 200,000 for us.
So that won't be state funded then?
Not that, yeah, nothing
This
I've
point.
seen.
Correct. So there's lots of, again, things are going in and out of bills, and now they're in committees. So these next couple weeks, hopefully we'll get a much more solid picture of funding. So when we present the budget in June, it should be identified with as long as they do everything within session.
I know
Hopefully have that.
MSBA, they were really pushing for state funding of that unemployment stuff.
And they pulled that out, so.
It pulled the unemployment out?
No, it's still moving forward, but what happened in the original bill, there was funding behind it. Now what happens is, in order to fund it, it would be split between the employer and the employee. So there's not state funding coming behind it. So lots of unknowns.
Right.
So basically, this 600,000 from last year is going to carry over into our budget next year?
Correct.
Or is that going to go away? When we look at this in June, it's going to say we're going to be 900,000 in the tank. So last year, when you guys were $1.8 million, how much did you carry over?
We carried over on that one, I want to say the year before, it was like 1.2 or something like that. I'd have to go back and look.
So again, we budget conservative. It shows the deficit, and as the year goes on, you start to see this. So that 1.8 is now, at this point in the year, is down to 600. By the time we wrap up everything June 30th, it'll probably be less than that 600. And then it rolls over. So it's like we're flying the plane as we're building it with whatever the state funding comes through.
So just let me get this straight. So you guys projected 1.8, but 1.2 carried over from the year before. So you pretty much projected 600,000, and now you've come in at about 600,000.
And that 1.8 was rolling, the prior year, putting in all our assumptions, the revenues, the expenses, so it grew, and then we had to make reductions, and we got it down to that 1.8. So every year we carry forward what our budget is, and then we put in our assumptions, and if we need to make reductions, we do or don't, and then we come up with what we present to the board.
It'd be really great some year to have money
Usual
and
way
say.
to do things.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
it's hard to create a budget when you don't know what decisions are going to be. So you do the best you can. And like I said, we built a very conservative budget is what's being presented to you.
As you said.
So
Right.
my hope is that funding comes through and some unfunded mandates go away. And like I said, it'd be really nice to add something or build something besides a building.
Any other questions?
No, but useful context for the policy discussion a little bit later on, and I'm sure there will be more questions at that point.
Thank you.
Thanks, Marcy.
Thank you, Marcy.
Now, we can move forward with new business. So our first action item for this evening is the approval of the APAC, or American Indian Parent Advisory Committee, vote of non-concurrence, response as presented. And then I'm not sure who's presenting?
Both of us.
Both of you? Okay.
So Michelle and I will speak a little bit to this, and if there's additional questions, we might pull some folks in. But we wanted to start off in putting together our response to the American Indian Parent Advisory Committee members' vote of non-concurrence in March. We wanted to reciprocate with the gratitude and acknowledge the collaboration that group brought forward. And we started our recommendations with a list of thank yous and just acknowledging the great work they've done in bringing programming into the schools and assisting with so many of the things that we wanted to make happen for those students. And so we wanted to acknowledge that and also offer a gift that would be a tree that we can plant in collaboration in the school forest to represent that collaborative spirit in which we want to come together. And so the other piece of that is there were 4 recommendations, and Michelle's going to speak to those in a second, but we wanted to add a 5th. We really felt like this process how it's set up, by the state doesn't necessarily allow for collaboration. And so we want to suggest a recommendation for next year that the groups that get to contribute to this process don't do it in separate rooms, that we do it together, and knowing that we have the same goals and we want to accomplish the same things for these students. And so that was our 5th recommendation, is that we come together on that. And Michelle, if you want to speak to the other 4, that'd be great.
So the APAC gave us 4 recommendations, and Sarah just spoke to one that we decided to add. So the first recommendation, our response to that, and I think you'll understand what the recommendation was by our response, but if you have questions, feel free to ask us. So recommendation number 1 is the district is excited about the opportunity to apply for and participate in the MDE Dreamcatcher project next school year in order to reduce special education disproportionality of American Indian students and to provide our special education staff with deeper cultural knowledge of issues impacting the special education process. The second recommendation is the district also plans to provide professional development on Indigenous cultural practices next January 2024 for all staff. The district will continue to partner with Indigenous presenters and trainers to build professional learning into the curriculum in other classroom methods, such as the use of restorative practices. Recommendation number 3 is for future hiring involving positions paid for through the American Indian state or federal funds. The district will invite the APAC chair to participate in the hiring panel and to provide input. The final hiring decisions will be made by the district. And recommendation number 4, Brainerd Public Schools welcomes the creation of language and culture classes for our students and APAC's consultation on this matter. We're also very excited to explore working with potential post-secondary education options offered in this area by tribal colleges as well. Are there any questions about that?
I have a question. Did you guys change recommendation number 2? From what we got? What's in the packet?
About,
Well, this smudging thing. You know, we've been contacted about the smudging, and I really don't have a problem with the smudging. I'm just concerned why it's happening in our school. Why doesn't it go outside? Or, you know, I'm fine with smudging. I just don't know. I just think it's a little over the top, and people are complaining, and kids are complaining, and I don't think it's something we can't handle, but I think it's something that maybe should be taken outside. And I don't know if that's a big deal, but it just seems a little odd to me that we're burning tobacco and sage and things in the school. People are upset about it, and I don't think it's a big loss to somehow keep everybody happy, because I think that's what we're trying to do, right? Is just keep everybody included and a place to belong, as Heidi says, our school motto. And I don't think I don't think it's an overreach. So is there any way that we can accommodate that without having to do it in the classroom? Heidi?
It's not part of this specific recommendation, and I know we have other guidelines in place to acknowledge and care for that and kind of talk through what that process looks like going forward. So that's separate from this, but if we want to bring that back to a separate meeting.
Well, I must just have the wrong stuff, because mine reads that on recommendation 2, the district is beginning to work on administrative procedure for smudging with involvement from APAC and would like to accompany this with education for staff and students.
And that is a separate guideline being worked on, so that's our commitment to that work continuing. So that the conversation that we're having is being had, this is our commitment to having that conversation by saying this in the resolution.
So this resolution really doesn't have any teeth to it. Is that right?
The teeth.
This is our wish list?
This is us committing to the recommendations that the group brought forward to us and us saying we'd like to be a partner in this work.
Correct. So the question you're asking, DJ, is specific to the procedure which is going to be discussed. Currently, we have it outlined in policy, but some of the questions that have come up, we're looking at guidelines around that. But as shared, we've shared the policy and we've shared the guidelines with the Clean Indoor Air Act and those pieces. So, but what we've asked and our APAC committee has asked is for more procedural guidelines with that. But right now, everything we do aligns with policy. So, but further discussions being had collectively together, and that's what's important. So, school board and APAC.
So the resolution today is committing that we're going to continue in that conversation. It doesn't take any action on policy or guidelines.
So said another way, don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, but it creates framework and sort of directional guidance on where to take the conversations as opposed to getting into the nitty-gritty of the how-to.
Exactly.
right.
So my question is, then why are we voting on it?
Well, to empower
What
them
is there
to.
to vote on?
It's the resolution of non-concurrence that we're actually voting on to say that we acknowledge what they brought forward, what the APAC group brought forward, and to say that we're ready to collaborate and work on the recommendations that they brought forward to help us get to a place where we can be in concurrence.
As a school
Mr. Chair,
board,
excuse me.
sorry. As a school board, originally was 4, but you're recommending 5. There's 5 recommendations in response to that vote of non-concurrence, and that's what's being presented.
Director Ward?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Isn't this part of a state process that we are following?
Yeah, correct.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that that's on the record as well, that that's part of the state process, that, you know, that we do this. And thank you for the work that you did on the resolution. I'll move the, do we need to move it? I'll move the acceptance of the resolution with APAC.
Mr. Chair.
Director Hyman.
Just a couple of questions. Recommendation number 3, it appears that somebody from the committee is going to be part of potentially the hiring process, giving recommendations. Is this a practice that we use in other hiring procedures within the district, or is this just something that we're recommending under this resolution?
So we do not have that as a hiring practice. So specific to this position, they're speaking regarding the Indigenous Student Liaison, and APAC has requested that since it's going to be a liaison for their students, that they participate in that.
Okay.
So that was one of the requests that came out.
Okay, last question.
Rick?
So what is the liaison? What is their position? What do they do?
Well, we have our liaison with us.
We do.
So Niji, would you like to describe what you do?
Mr. Chair?
Yeah,
could I
Director
ask a
Wentworth.
point of order, because I moved the resolution. It hasn't been a second, so we can have further discussion, or?
Correct.
I'll make a second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, and now further discussion.
Bonjour, anin Nijgabowik, Indigenous. I am the Indigenous Student Cultural Liaison for all of Brainerd School District. It's a pleasure to officially meet all of you. And I would like to say that I am, so if you look up the meaning of a liaison, it's a go-between. It's somebody who acts as a bridge between two nations, a bridge between two people, two parties, somewhat of a mediator, somewhat of a cultural integrator. I like to call myself a little bit of magic because I do some pretty miraculous things when it comes to bridging gaps between our staff and our students. And one of the things that I do here is help our students acclimate to Western education system. I help our staff to understand epigenetic traumas, historical violence, things that are impacting our students, our Native American, our Indigenous, our First Nation students, and their families as well. So that's kind of what I do in a nutshell. I know you were asking about that. And I'm open to answering some questions. I don't want to take up a whole lot of time, but I did want to just thank you guys for being willing to work with our Dreamcatcher program. You will see a relief in our SPED programming as a result of collaborating with us on that. We look forward to this partnership on a professional development level. So I know there's a lot about our people, my Indigenous people, the Anishinaabe, the Lakota, Dakota. We have Cree, we have Crow here. We have Indigenous people from other parts of Turtle Island, and we have them all in this learning area. And I know that there's a lot that the community here does not understand about us, even though we are the First Nation people and we are the caretakers of this land. And we're looking forward to helping the staff have a better understanding of who we are and what we have been through and what we're going through, and the process that we are going through now to better our lives, better our communities together. I wanted to thank you for that continued collaboration with us. I know change is difficult sometimes, but change is always good. Creator brings changes when we need them the most. And then I just wanted to touch one more, Heidi, or Ms. Han. So APAC, we are asking for the involvement in the hiring process for not only our Indigenous liaison, so that would be like a position much like my own, but other positions where the primary funding for that position comes from our Indigenous education funds, not from the general education pool funding, but this is something fully self-contained. We pay for these positions out of our own funding. And therefore, that is why we are asking to have some say-so or some impact on that hiring process. So before I step away, and I'd like to thank you one more time for committing to being willing to have these open conversations. Is there any other questions before I step down?
Dr. Heidman?
Yeah, in recommendation number 4, it appears to me that we're going to be creating a new language class?
Yes, so the primary languages of the people that are known to have occupied this land is predominantly Lakota Dakota and Ojibwe, which is the language of the Anishinaabe people. That is my people. I have already started minor integration into our Indigenous Students Club meetings, which we hold once a week, group where I teach our students about culture, so the Indigenous culture, the significance of teachings that go along with certain regalia. So we don't call our clothes outfits, we call them regalia out of respect for what they mean when we wear them. We are wearing our ceremonies when we put these on, and there's certain teachings that go with all of this stuff. And so I'm also teaching the students language. And most of us don't speak our own language. I know my mother was a first language speaker. She spoke Ojibwe-Moan. She spoke Ojibwe in the home. But because she was a residential school survivor, she no longer felt comfortable teaching that. She was a teacher of the language, but she wouldn't teach her own children. I'm breaking that cycle, I'm breaking that chain, and I'm allowing our students in their own process to reconnect with their identities through language, culture, and we're hoping to have this in place as a curriculum as I work on my finishing off my student teaching credentials as a cultural liaison.
So thank you for that. So this class, is it going to be mainly directed at Indigenous students, or is it going to be other students will be able to take this class?
I think Director Heidman, some of that is the work ahead that we're going to be exploring over the next year and starting to look at what a course might look like and who would that be for. We have an excellent partner with Regional Centers for Excellence. We've been starting to meet with Niju and I and talking about what other courses look like in other districts, and in some districts that's offered just to Indigenous students, and some in districts that's offered to other students. So something that we're definitely exploring and researching right now.
Don't get me wrong, I'm not against this resolution. I'm just, my nature is I ask a lot of questions. So one last one. Is this a more of a culturally responsive resolution, or is it educational in nature? And is it going to improve? Is it going to improve the proficiencies of Indigenous students?
I would say yes and yes. As the young lady had talked about resiliency programs, I would consider this to fall under that umbrella, that category of resiliency. You know, you think about the Indigenous people, and they have to be one of the most resilient people that come to my mind that we have the blessing of being in contact with on a daily basis. We have seen that when students feel like they belong, students know their identity and they know who they are and where they come from, and they have that increase in self-esteem, they have an increase in communities and understanding of I know who I am and I know what I'm supposed to be here for. Creator put me here for a reason and I know what it is. We see their education levels rise. We see their dependency on other programs decrease because they are becoming more resilient. It is also an education-based program. For our students, it is relevant that they learn a lot of these things. Our languages are dying, and we are revitalizing our languages, and therefore they are learning new things. They're learning new ways to be wonderful, brilliant, creative amazing people. And I think anything that is able to do that in our community is going to boost our community as a whole. You have students who are coming in and they don't know who they are. They don't know their languages, they don't know their culture, and they're learning how to make moccasins. They're learning, what's the meaning of this shell. They're learning what their parents have gone through and ways to break that intergenerational trauma. They are learning so many things that we thought were lost, and they're not. So I would say that it's a collaboration of both things coming together, both educational and a resilience type program.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just add something too with the Dream Catcher project that we are committing to applying for and participating in will definitely impact our educational practices. Oftentimes, students from another culture, like an American Indian student, might struggle with some issues with learning, and some of those could be cultural. So we need to train our special education teachers as they're looking at these students and determining what would be best in terms of an intervention, that we're ruling out that it's a cultural issue rather than it is a learning problem. And so that's what the Dreamcatcher project is designed to do. It's to train our staff to be able to explore what actually is impacting this student. Because there's a disproportionate amount of students that are qualifying for special ed, when really it's a cultural difference, not a learning issue.
Right. Thank you.
I have one last question. So where do you office, or do you go to all the schools?
I'm everywhere.
So that's what you do?
So primarily I office out of Brainerd High School. And I frequent Forest View Middle School pretty often. I also work out of, with some students at the MLAT program. I'm here, there, and everywhere, actually. I collaborate with the principals for the elementary schools, and I'm planning on expanding my horizons next year.
Oh, cool. All right.
Thank you. Thank you, Nishu. Thank you. And thank you on behalf of the APAC committee. We do see you and we do appreciate you, and we are very thankful that it feels like we're making progress. It really does. Thank you. Chimikwech.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion from Director Ward. And a second, I missed the second. Who was it? Oh, from Director Spear for this resolution. Further discussion. Okay, hearing no further discussion, this is a resolution which I believe calls for a roll call vote.
Michelle Brecken,
Yes.
Jay Godlinger,
Yes.
Randy Heidman,
Yes.
Sarah Spear,
Yes.
John Ward,
Yes.
Kevin Boyle,
Yes.
all in favor.
Resolution passes. We'll move on to the next item for action, which is the approval of the K through 4 elementary music curriculum with Director Murtha and others.
And entourage. All right, thank you for the opportunity to bring to you the K-4 elementary music curriculum recommendations that have been generated by our teachers, brought to the District Advisory Committee. As with all curriculum work, it starts with fulfilling the promise of the standards. Standards are what we guarantee are what students are going to know and be able to do. The other key component to curriculum work is ensuring that it's guaranteed and viable, that no matter what address you're coming out of in the morning and what room number you're going into when you get to school, you're going to get the same high-quality education. That's what we mean by guaranteed. Viable means that we're capable of sustaining this with the research and the expertise that we have. There are 4 questions that guide all curriculum work that we do. First question is, what do we want students to know and be able to do? Very simple. It's a question of outcome. It's a question that's answered by the Minnesota State Academic Standards. Second question is, how will we know that they know it and can do it? Question of assessment. The next 2 questions are how we respond to student learning as evidence of learning appears to us. So what do we do if a student already knows and can do prior to teaching? It's a question of enrichment. What do we do when a student still cannot and still does not know after instruction, which is a question of intervention or a question of differentiation? So Ms. Lee and Ms. Pulowski, who are representing the elementary music teachers, are going to walk through their work, their priority standards, and how they're fulfilling the promise of the standards for our elementary students.
Thank you, Mr. Murtha, and thank you to the board and Superintendent Hahn for having us. I am Jill Lee. I'm the music teacher at Baxter Elementary School, one of the music teachers at Baxter. And this is Jenny Pulowski from Harrison Elementary School. And we will tell you what we've been working on. So starting with the structure of our program, in K4 music in the elementary schools, we have 6 elementary buildings and 1 to 2 teachers at each building. And all of our K4 students receive music 3 times a week for 25 minutes, but there's a little bit of difference at Lowell. So most of our elementary schools are exactly 3 times a week, 25 minutes per class. Lowell has a slightly different schedule where they have 25 minutes twice every 3 days. So they have a little bit different schedule, but their time still equals at least 75 minutes per week. Our music standards have 5 strands in elementary music and actually all the way through. So the first strand is the foundations. That is actually integrated into all of the other standards. So that would be all of the things to know about music. The second strand is create, so making music, arranging music, composing music. The third standard is perform, singing, playing instruments. And we have the fourth standard, respond, so responding in various ways to music. And the fifth standard is also, or the fifth strand is also integrated into the others, and that's connect, so connecting to the other things that we're learning, other curriculums and outside culturally and in our own lives outside of school. So we chose to prioritize and create our unit plans based on strands 2, 3, and 4. And then strands 1 and 5 are connected into all of those. And because music is not set up as we do this unit and then this unit and this unit, everything kind of is interconnected. We chose to make our unit plans based on these strands. Mr. Murtha already kind of told you the process here. First, we prioritize benchmarks. Then we write student-friendly learning targets. We create assessments based on those prioritized benchmarks, and we select resources to be able to effectively teach those. I'm actually going to skip and come back to this slide. When we were prioritizing benchmarks, one of the main discussions that we had was what were the measurable benchmarks and what made the most sense to measure. So strand 3, perform, is a good example because standard 5 is develop and refine artistic techniques and work for performance. And then standard 6 is make artistic choices in order to convey meaning through performance. We chose to prioritize standard 5 and the benchmarks that go with it from kindergarten all the way through 4th grade because we can truly measure those artistic techniques and how students are refining and developing those versus it's really difficult to measure a student's personal artistic choices when they're trying to convey meaning. So this slide gives an example of learning targets that would be student-friendly to go along with benchmark 3.0.3.5.1, demonstrate moving, singing, and playing instruments with others. So some benchmarks that we might see in an elementary music classroom for kindergarten would be, I can sing with my class. I can dance when the music plays and stop when the music stops. I can keep a steady beat with the music. And even though this benchmark doesn't directly talk about steady beat, we know that that is a huge foundational skill for any performance. So going back then, this slide shows the skill growth that we would hope to see from kindergarten all the way through grade 4. In this example, our singing alone rubrics. And that was another discussion we had to have, is how do you measure something like singing? So we created rubrics for singing and playing so that we can truly measure the students' performances. And then one other example of our assessments that we created, we've got 2nd grade and 4th grade for the CREATE strand. And this would be from standard 2, benchmark 1. And this would just show the difference between how students would move from creating a melody in 2nd grade to 4th grade, and actually putting it on the staff and writing the music. And then we have a selection of resources that all of our elementary schools have and use regularly. And that's all I have. What
We need
questions?
a demonstration.
They will happily make you sing.
I would say it was an outstanding presentation, primarily because you started it and ended it with a graphic of a saxophone. So, that's all I really have to say about that.
I think you guys did a nice job, because I think we just take things for advantage.
Yeah.
That kids go in and they enjoy music and they learn to love music, but then you think about the work that our educators are having to do around standards, and then, like you said, the hard work of how do you measure it? And so I think you gave excellent examples of how do you take a kindergarten and measure these steps compared to a 4th grader.
I hope Michelle wasn't wanting us all to dance to the beat on that.
I know, she's showing her musical skills.
For next vacation.
No, I'm paying attention, I promise.
But again, it's taking those standards you prioritize and then breaking them down. And so at any point in time, what are you teaching? How are you teaching it? How are you assessing it? Happens in every subject. This is a great example of music.
And this is brand new for us, so I think all of us, since we're sort of piloting, all of our assessments right now, there will be some changes, and we're figuring out what's working well, what's not working well, all those things. But we collaborate really well together, and so, our whole team is pretty great that way, so.
I think as we think about that in a broader curriculum sense, one of the things that we're striving for is consistency, right? And, that was one of the things I think I saw right away when you were talking right there is, collaboration and consistency, and it looks really good.
The 4th graders can write a melody.
Yeah, absolutely.
Glad I got out of there.
You can join us anytime, and we would be more than happy to.
Send my sister.
Right.
Send one of my sisters in.
Director Heidman has actually subbed in my classroom, so.
They're high-energy classes. And the kids love it. It's fantastic. Some of them may not go on to be musicians and whatnot, but it is just high energy, and I think the kids really enjoy it, and I know you guys are working your tails off to make things even better, so.
Well, and I don't think when we go into a class, we're not trying to create the next Mozart.
Correct.
If our hope is when they leave, they think, I had a really positive experience, it's something, and that all the learning, they're not even necessarily aware of everything they've gotten from it, but that they have a positive memory or experience with it, and so that they maybe will want to continue with it.
Most
but if
definitely.
nothing else, it was a positive for them.
It's, like I said, it's high energy and the kids love it. And you're right, sometimes when you're having fun, you forget about, what did I just learn?
Yeah.
But it's a blast.
In our elementary team especially, we like to talk about kind of the 30-year plan. Like, we want, our students might not become professional musicians, but we want them to be able to experience music and appreciate music throughout their life. And if they have a baby that they're rocking someday, we want them to be able to sing to their child or be able to clap the steady beat at a baseball game. So.
Do we still have like
Right.
grade school choirs, middle school choir?
Middle school, not elementary anymore.
So they start in 5th grade, is that the deal? 6th?
The performing groups start in 6th grade.
Our excellence in music is unbelievable, though. You go to these concerts and band and choir, and I mean, this is where it all starts.
Thank you.
These young kids, get them interested. It's cool.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you again for having us.
So we have to approve this?
Yeah, so having heard the
Motion.
presentation,
So stay
because
for
we have a
questions.
motion.
You gotta stay
Director
for the
Donnelly.
vote, we gotta decide where. Motion.
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion by Director Dondelinger and a second by Director Brecken to approve the K through 4 elementary music curriculum as presented. Any further discussion or questions? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We got to get that dancing stuff out of there next time, though.
It is one of the strands. Do you want to
Next
go?
up is the approval of the 5 through 12 music curriculum as presented.
Unfortunately, Mr. Summernes, who did a wonderful job of presenting to the District Advisory Committee earlier last month, is unavailable tonight, so I am left bringing forward the presentation. There's no way I can do it with the same flair that he can, so we're going to be very bare bones. What you're going to find here is that they've done the vertical work beyond what the elementary has done. They are working within the same family of standards. They are looking at the grade level indicators of the benchmarks, and they're stacking them up. So what you see with them is they're doing the same work and asking the same questions about what are the priority standards. What are the standards of leverage? One, that help them prepare students to move from one level of expectation to a greater level. And also, as the elementary team shared out, what we call a dispositional learning target, that there's something that they love or carry with them in terms of relationship to the content. It's not just unique to music. So they may not become the next Mozart, but they love music, or music is a part of their life. It enriches their life. It's something they can share, whether they're sharing through performance or sharing through appreciation. So you see that same work continuing through at the secondary level. We have lots of students who participate in our band programming or all our music programming throughout the district, whether it's band, orchestra, or choir at multiple levels. We're looking at significant percentages of the students. Mr. Summernes could quote you the percent in any given moment. That I cannot do, but I can produce the totals for you here. One other element of consistency in their assessment is they have a common rubric for all the standards at every level across each genre, whether it's band, choir, or music, or band, choir, or orchestra. Because the art standards are the same for the 5 categories of art: music, dance, theater, visual arts, and media arts. The only thing that's unique are the benchmarks, those grade level indicators of what learning looks like within that framework. Because of that, they're able to create rubrics that allow them to have a vocabulary for the arts, a vocabulary of correction, a vocabulary of inspiration that moves students up a progression of greater challenge throughout the benchmarks. And that consistency means that students can anticipate how they're going to be assessed, which gives them more control over their own learning and empowers them to take responsibility for their learning. Finally, we have a significant number of offerings at the high school level for a variety of musical interests. Some of these are stacked classes where there are prerequisites for the next ones. And again, the numbers for the high school, the common rubric, and any questions you may have.
So is music an elective in 9 through 12?
They're required to have one art one art credit for graduation. Music is frequently, or if not the most popularly way to fulfill that.
And then grades 5 through 8, how many minutes of music do they get in a week?
It depends on the year.
Okay.
There is a gap in, okay, I pulled up the 5th grade slide. All students take 5th grade music. It's on a regular rotation. It's probably every other day opposite of Phi-Ed. Grades 6 and 7, band, orchestra, and choir are definitely rotation courses that they're part of what they do all year long.
Okay.
Okay. They're not going to get it every single day, at least not in the current format. That would not occur until you're at the high school level, 9 through 12, where you're taking the full course for graduation credit.
Any other questions? I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion from Director Heidman with a second by Director Board to approve the grades 5 through 12 music curriculum as presented. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Director Murtha.
Thank you much.
Thank you. We now have Angie Bennett coming forward for approval of the revised insurance premiums as presented. And Marcy.
Yep, I drug up Marcy with me because she knows her numbers, as we know. So let's see. There we go. Uh-oh. You're not connecting, so you might see all the pages on the left here, but hopefully it'll help me navigate through here. So we did a brief presentation that should have been in all of your board packets regarding the insurance premium rate setting for the school district. Our school insurance plan year is from September 1st through August 31st. So what we're looking at is determining what's the percentage increase based on our claims experience will be effective September 1st, so we can start the open enrollment process for all of our staff this June. And Ryan is the miracle worker, so he got that. So let's go ahead and present. So the first page, obviously, I have a lot to cover here, so I'm not going to go through step by step, but just going to kind of give you a brief overview, especially since there's a lot of new school board members that may not have been a part of this in the past. This is a presentation that is brought to the school board every year based on insurance committee recommendations. And so we're going to kind of briefly go over the medical plan types, stop loss, our current enrollment, and looking at the history of such, our fund balance in the self-insured pool, claims and fund balance data, how we determine premium amounts, National Insurance Services, who's our insurance broker, they presented some options for us to consider in the last insurance committee meeting, what the impact to the employees are, the general fund impact, and then the insurance committee recommendation, and then any questions and discussions, and then hopefully we'll have a recommendation for board action. So these are our 4 core plans. Some of you may know that last bargaining sessions, we did end up pushing to open up all 4 plans. Previous to that, they had, based on contract or handbook, they would only be able to elect to enroll in specific plans. So instead of kind of restricting that based on employee group, we did open up all the plans. This shows what the current premiums are for single and family for those plans. This does not mean this is what the employee pays or what the district pays. That's the full premium. Our self-insurance fund, we currently have a $300,000 stop loss insurance carrier. For those that are not familiar with stop loss, it's basically if you have claims in excess of this amount, the pool or the fund no longer pays for that claim. The insurance carrier of the stop loss does. And so we last year raised this from 200 to 300,000, and that decreased our amount of administrative costs. It paid off for us this school year, where we only had one claim that both rose above the 200,000 line item and also went to the 300,000. So actually we saved money by increasing our stop loss for this year. NIS had stated that's typical 3 out of 4 times you'll win on this proposition, but it all depends on what our claim experience is. This is our current enrollment and kind of our trend over the past several years. We do have 806 employees and retirees with coverage, and including dependents, that's a total of 2,189 people. The current fund balance, so basically we have a fund balance that exists due to the premiums paid into the plan. So as long as your claims are lower than what the premiums going into the fund, your fund balance will increase. If your claims are more than what you're getting in premiums, your funds will decrease. The current reserve percentage, and the reason I have a range is because it really depends on where you're at with the claims number, is about 45 to 49% funded. There are a few schools of thought as far as what is a good fund balance. From the auditing perspective, Marcy always preaches you gotta have 3 months. Gotta have 3 months in savings in case the world ends. We have to be able to cover our claims. NIS and speaking with the insurance committee, they're feeling more comfortable with a higher range. So anywhere from 25 to 45%. That was from NIS. The actual insurance committee felt most comfortable about that 45%. So keeping enough in the reserve so we're not going to see a gigantic increase somewhere along the line where we might be able to dip into that fund balance to kind of offset any double-digit increases that may come up. This is very difficult to see, but we have data from back to 2000. As you go through, you can see that the total premiums or the income to the fund balance is in the first column, followed by the claims and expenses. The red obviously is no good. The black is good, so it's adding to that fund balance. The overall balance, and I keep saying balance, sorry, but how many months that equates to, percentage of claims to expense, and then the target balance, if you were to look at the 3-month category, there towards the right, and the premium changes, so you can kind of see that historical measure. Now the bottom 3 rows is what we'll kind of dig into a little bit more. So this is looking into our plan year of 2024. We will be going over a couple different scenarios that was presented by NIS, and then I'll bring forward the insurance committee recommendation. But you can kind of see where in this table where we would land if we chose one of those percentages. So when NIS presents their recommendations or their options to us, they take into account these factors. So the current year claims and expenses compared to the premium revenue, current level of fund balance, and the increase in claims and expenses based on the review of expected administrative fees, stop loss premiums, current claims, historical claims, and the average inflationary trend seen in the health insurance industry. So considering those factors, they presented 3 different options. And I put on the right kind of what the impact to the fund balance would be. So 8.9% increase. They recommending this due to our high level of claims this past plan year. We had several bigger claims that kind of took over a little bit, and we had the one that hit the stop loss, but more than typical number of claims. So they had recommended at the high end an 8.9 increase. This would maintain our fund balance where it's at, so that 45 to 49% percentage range, depending on where we end with the insurance year. 7.9 increase would require leveraging some of the self-insurance fund balance at approximately $153,513, and then a 6.9 increase would leverage that a little bit more and would take out of the self-insurance fund $307,100. So we have a lot of bargaining units, a lot of benefit and compensation and benefit handbooks. Everybody kind of works things a little bit differently depending on what the individuals want in their unit. They may leverage that they want more contribution to their health insurance versus a higher increase to wages. Some have done the exact opposite. So I'm trying to collectively give you a summary. In the majority of our agreements, what our primary focus has been at single coverage, we're going to try to keep you whole. So you have at minimum one plan where you don't have to pay anything. Hopefully more than one plan. And so we have written into those contracts or handbooks that if there's an increase to the premiums, that the district will absorb that increase so we can continue to have single coverage for each of the employee. Most of our contracts, I would say most, 2/3 probably have Plan C as their base plan. We do have some early on that shifted over the high deductible to get a higher increase in salary. So we do have some that have Plan G, which is a high deductible health plan, as their base plan. So basically with any of these recommendations, the impact to the employee for single coverage is 0. There won't be an increase for the employee. For family coverage, it's a little bit different. What we have talked through with all the employee groups is that we're trying to get a little bit of teeth in the game because it's all of our responsibility to keep the fund strong. So we're splitting that increase. So let's say we chose, the 9%, 4.5%, split between the two. The district would pick up half, the employee would pick up half. For Plan B, which is our richest plan, typically the employee will take on the entire premium increase. And that's a very rich plan. So there's also an impact to the general fund when considering these choices. I've outlined this below. 8.9% will not only, or will keep the insurance fund whole, but will have an increase to the general fund in the amount of $578,500. 7.9 will have that self-insurance fund cost plus $513,500, and the 6.9 would have the additional self-insurance costs that we talked about earlier, in addition to another $448,500. When we met with the insurance committee, we try to have representatives from all insurance groups or all employee groups to kind of give their input onto not only our plans, but also what they feel would be best for their employee groups as well as the fund. When they brought forward their recommendation, their stance was nothing less than a 7.9. We had a camp that was at the 8.9. We want to keep that reserve very healthy. We had some that, boy, that's going to have an impact on some of my employees. Not sure about that. Kind of leveled in between that 7.9, 8.9% is where they landed. When we consider the impact to the general fund, as well as to some of our lower paid employees, it is my recommendation, I guess I would say, is that the maximum would be 7.9, because for our lower paid employees, if they have family coverage, the higher percentage that they go, the more they're going to end up paying for that coverage. It's also a big chunk towards the general fund, so just trying to see where that happy medium is. So any questions? And then just put discussion and kind of where you guys are feeling comfortable.
Director Donnellinger.
So these claims are topped at 300,000, right?
For one individual.
One individual. Is there a stopgap that if there was 100 individuals at 300,000, or is there a?
It's per individual. So it has, let's say there's a cancer diagnosis. So if the claims towards that diagnosis hit that 300,000.
Yeah, I understand, but the question
max deductible.
Is what if we had 100 people hit 300,000? Are we open? I mean, is that a liability that we could have?
The backstop kicks in regardless.
Yep.
On the one person at 300,000?
If 200 people had $400,000 medical events, they would all, the backstop would kick in above 300,000 for all of them.
Yeah.
But 100 of them's a lot of money.
Of course. That's why there's a hedging that has to happen when we were debating the 200 to 300,000, because we used to have it at 200,000. But the premiums for us are much higher.
Well, we must have coverage for total claims, don't we?
Well, that's where our fund balance comes in. So all the premiums for all the plans goes into a big savings account. So all the claims under 300,000 are paid from that bucket of money. It's just for the high claimants, we have the kind of that savings.
Well, I understand it. It's the same thing
Yeah.
I do in my businesses, but, you know, in mine, we have the same kind of, we can't afford $300,000 exposures, but I'd say 25,000. But then we have an aggregate that if 10 people hit the 25,000, that's as far as it goes, because we buy another policy, stopgap, as you're calling it, to cover that. So I was just curious, do we have that? Or it's
No,
kind of the nick of
so
bankruptcy.
this is the distinction. It took me a while to learn this, and my day job, actually, I kind of live in some of this. We're self-insured in the district, right?
Yep.
So completely different ballgame. There is no provider. We're the provider.
Well, who is the broker?
Well, there is no, the broker is NIS, who just helps us navigate the self-insurance landscape. So when, let's say, we have a staff member that goes in for a $20,000 cardiac event at the ER, the school district writes a check for the 20 grand.
Yep.
We use the Medica network, but that's all we're doing is we're using their network. They're not the carrier. They're not the insurance provider. We're just leveraging their network.
We obviously have insurance because we're capped at 300,000. So we have a stopgap insurance, am I right?
Above that, when you have an individual event that hits that trigger amount, below that, it's literally that fund, that
So
Fund
there is
20 that pays
insurance.
that.
I mean, we are self-insured.
We are self-insured and
We're
there's.
self-insured with
protecting
call it a catastrophic backstop.
Yep.
Right?
Right.
So if you want to think about it through that lens. So it took me a while to get my head around that because it's a lot of what we were talking about it in the context last year was trying to figure out how to incentivize people moving from the 4 different plan types that we have. Because you have to remember the money that goes into that fund that pays those medical expenses is generated from the premiums that the staff and the employees pay.
Yeah,
That's our income.
I get it.
So if we get those enrollments out of balance and everybody all of a sudden tomorrow went to the high deductible plan, which has much lower premiums, that would cut our revenues into the fund by as much as 60, 70%. And now all of a sudden you don't have any money to write checks for those events that happen. So it's a pretty complicated balancing act that has to happen with that fund. But the short answer to your question is we only have an outside insurance carrier that kicks in where we're not writing the check when you have that one singular event that hits that $300,000 threshold.
But there could be 5 of them.
Right, we had one last year, and it was, if memory serves, well in the $700,000 range. It was significant. So, when we get that, then we get reimbursed for that, and it pays us $400,000 back into the fund. So to Angie's point, what she was saying is statistically, if you were going to Vegas and betting on this, you're going to bet that you're going to hit that backstop 3 out of 4 years. And the 4th year, you're going to have no events, and you're going to have paid the premium for nothing, like any sort of insurance.
Right.
So that's the rationale behind that piece.
And if you did have the 200, I'm sure we'd get dropped and have to find another carrier. I mean, that's,
I think you guys have a aggregate total that you can't go over.
Well, an
5
actuary is an
million,
actuary. You can
6 million, somewhere in there in your policy. I think it'd be crazy not to. I mean, if you had some plague or something like that, my Lord, the whole deal could just go toast. It'd all go down. Do they do any coaching? Just broker come in and work with everyone that's on the policy, have a meeting once a year, talk about ways to, like on these HSAs, you can invest these HSAs. They're just like a 401k because you're taking that out before tax. And, it's kind of a new way of investing money that you don't spend your HSA if you can afford not to. And I mean, is anybody coaching?
Yeah, we actually, when we opened up all the plans, we had quite a bit of coaching in regard to HSA and HRAs because they're very different vehicles and what you can do with them post-retirement. So Medica actually came, and then further at that time is who we had, and they did seminars and webinars and met with people in person and kind of did all of that. We do talk about it in the insurance committee. We meet approximately 4 times a year. And then the union leadership or the unit leader who attends those is bringing back that information. The teachers are also planning and do every year some kind of gathering with new teachers as well as existing teachers about the different plans so they can kind of have a better understanding. So we've been trying to do a lot of that.
Well, it makes a difference, I think.
It does.
It's getting more and more complicated, more and more expensive. It's kind of a big deal. And, it's hard to get, at least in my world, it's hard to get everybody to show up, especially the single youngsters, they're just like, I don't care. But there's important stuff in there, especially when you're young, because you don't have any claims.
Yep.
So it's, you can save yourself some money. I got one more question and I'm done. I promise. Marcy, is this $513,000 figured into that budget that you gave us tonight, or is that going to go on top of the $1.5 million?
That is, part of it is, not all of it. So
Like half of it?
I gave just the straight, what it would cost. We originally had 4% in there.
On the insurance?
Hopeful.
Which is basically what it's going to cost us, because if we do the 8%, it's half for us and.
It depends
Oh, no,
on
it's
the-
more than that.
Depends, because we
1.5?
cover 100%
In most cases, you have
single.
16 different employee groups with handbooks, and some are very similar, but in some cases, the district is contributing as much as north of 80%.
Well, and
So-
100% on the single coverage. So
Yeah, I'm talking family
That's what
coverage.
kind of.
Yep.
But you got some of it in there anyways. It's
Some
not
of
like
it
the
in
whole
there,
500
yep.
is gonna
Yeah,
hit
but it
us.
varies depending on how each of those contracts was negotiated. Director Ward?
Mr. Chair, Angie, when I was working here and for years, our insurance committee was very, very active in, kind of like what Director Donlinger was talking about and Director Boyle was talking about, throughout the year, not just one time, not just, beginning and end of it, but all throughout the year, was very good at educating all units, educators, assistants, all of us with, for example, because as you said, the premiums, the employees are paying the premiums that, pay for the program. So, but we also need to try to keep our expenses down. So they'd come up with generic, use generics. And when we have a seminar on it, then smoking or diabetes or whatever it was, but and it made a difference. It does make a difference when you educate and coach along the line. Are we still doing that? Or, I mean, you said that,
We
okay,
are.
you have reps in the insurance committee. I get that. I know that. I've been there. But are they still actively engaged with employees on, we need to do better here or there or whatever?
We're doing better with it, I would say.
Okay.
I think what had made it more difficult is everybody was operating under a different playing field. So, teachers only had B and C. Some people only had G. So you were it was more difficult to have those more global conversations. Mackenzie, who's our benefits specialist, who took over for Lisa Witterout, I'm sure you know, we've really been trying to push more education out. So we have stuff in the employee lounges now. We do the electronic, we have it on the website. She talks to people almost daily about insurance options. We have intake meetings for every new employee that comes in. I know the teachers union is very good at educating their teachers in regard to this. We actually, I think we had one at the beginning of the year. And then I know that Eric Job is very good at pushing this information out to the teacher groups. So we do have educational assistants, more than one that attend the insurance committee. And again, they will push that information back out. What we're trying to do is hit it from a lot of different angles. So trying to have a benefit fair, trying to, some people just like to read it. Some people are more visual. They need a piece of paper. Some people want to see a video. So we're trying to embed all of those different things, because the last thing somebody needs is an email that's sent out once a month telling you something. We're trying to make it more engaging. So I think we continue to improve on that. And now that we're all having the same plans, it's a lot easier to do that.
Okay.
Go ahead, John.
So the age of the employees, is that playing a factor at all?
I don't think so. We have a lot of retirees on our plan, and I would say that definitely impacts it, because in a lot of those retirement benefits have now sunsetted in the contract, so that'll become less and less, but we do have a pretty large retiree population on our plans that could have some impact on it. We also, though, have quite a few younger people starting to come in. So we're starting to balance out a little bit more. What we are seeing as people come into the district, they're leaning towards that high deductible health plan because they're used to it. If you come from outside of this district, that's pretty much your offer is high deductible. There's very few of those comprehensive plans offered anymore. And so we are seeing that, and they're also helping to spread the word about the HSA, how you can invest. HRA, how that's great for retirement, paying for premiums post-retirement. So we're trying to get everybody engaged, but I think our overall, didn't you say over the last 5 years, our age has actually gone down a little bit because we're starting to get some of those younger people into our plans. Pharmaceuticals.
Yeah, so not to go too far down a rabbit hole, Director Ward, but a couple other things with NIS involved, right? What they do is they bring a variety of other vendors to the table that they have arrangements or access to.
Okay.
One is pharmaceutical related. So there's a program that we're talking about or that we're involved with where it's very complicated, but the upshot is that the pharmaceuticals are basically bought by this company in Canada, shipped from the US to Canada, and then essentially then sold back to us at a discounted rate. So that's one. Number two is there's these ancillary services that are things like we had one that was in place that the insurance committee just voted to terminate the relationship. It was called Grand Rounds before. What's it called now?
Included Health.
Included Health. So it was like a second opinion service where you could go do these things. And the idea there was to mitigate utilization, give people the opportunity to check things without having to go to expensive office visits to double check things.
Okay.
We're going to replace that with another one for about the same cost that actually expands way beyond that and gives people access. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I think, to your point, for that stuff to be really ramped up in terms of efficacy, we're going to want to get in front of staff on a regular basis. What I would say is that's ancillary to this discussion. This discussion is really just setting the drumbeat from a budgetary perspective on how much the district is going to pay in each of these bargaining groups and how much the employees are going to pay on the family coverage side. Does that make sense?
Yep, absolutely.
So from my own perspective as being the representative for the board on that committee and having been on it now my third year, and also Director Heidman and myself both have some extensive background in HSAs. I used to write extensively on the migration of not only traditional PPOs or what you would call, defined benefit health plans, the old school ones where you had, low premiums, or high premiums and low deductibles. And then we worked in that industry during the time when it migrated the other way and flipped to the high deductible plans with the high deductibles and on all those things. So as I was sitting through this meeting the other night, I find myself navigating to the lower the better. The 6.9 actually looks really good to me because in the end, if you really want to boil this down to its base component, in my opinion, what we're really talking about isn't dollars and cents as it relates to the compensation package in total for any employee of the school district that's on our family plan, whichever plan they're on, to a certain extent. In other words, if the district is paying, let's say, 60% in a specific case, and we go with the 8.9%, district's contribution goes way up, the employee contribution also goes up. That's going to have disproportionate impact on different groups than other groups, depending on the compensation levels of those individual groups, right? So by keeping it lower, you minimize the impact on the lower paid bargaining groups, subject to the negotiations of their contracts. But if as you know, we're just starting the negotiation process with all of those groups. So the idea of settling this wherever we go, I sort of don't care where we end up on this because it's going to flavor how much money we have left. The pie is only this size.
Yep.
It can divide it however you want to between benefits and salary. So whatever we decide tonight is going to define the benefit side of the pie. And then that's going to control, based on how much money we have, how the salary side of the pie is negotiated.
Yep.
So I'd argue it almost doesn't matter what we do because it's just going to change the playing field that Angie and her team have to play on when it's time to negotiate these contracts.
You said 6.9, did you mean 7.9?
I did not, I meant 6.9.
There's
Because
three
you're
of them,
saying
John.
7.9, are you?
Yeah, the recommendation from the committee was 7.9.
Okay.
I'm saying I'm in favor of 6.9, but
I see.
I'll vote for
Okay, I
whatever
wanted-
the group goes with for the
All right.
most part. Because
Thank you for that clarification, yeah.
Sure. Because in the end, like I said, it's 6.9 to me, if you're somebody who's making an hourly wage in one of our lesser paid units, something as little as $25 per paycheck for your family coverage is a big deal.
Yep.
It's a big deal for everybody, don't get me wrong. I don't want to minimize the impact on any group. But, it's the age-old argument about inflation. I mean, if you make $100,000 a year, a gallon of milk costs $5. If you make $25,000 a year, a gallon of milk costs $5. So the impact on that $25,000 a year person is substantially higher than it is on the $100,000 a year person. So that's why, and then you couple that with the impact to the general fund. So that's piece one. And then I'll say one more thing and shut up, but I really wanted to talk about this a lot because I've been on that committee since I was been on the board. The next piece of that really comes into play as it relates to the Fund 20, which is the fund, which has $7.1 million in it right now. If we went to 6.9%, we're still at 45%. Certain groups within the committee are nervous because some of them were around from a time period long ago when this was allowed to fall too low. I submit to you that that was a dereliction of duty by somebody, probably nobody in this room. and that we wouldn't let that happen again. And it's also slightly a byproduct of the fact that we did not raise it by anything the last 2 years.
We have not raised the rates in the last 2 years?
Not in 2 years.
That was my question. When you had these years where you made money, did the premiums actually go down? So they went down?
Oh, they did?
Oh, well, we did a
No,
reshuffle, no.
You just left
We
them the
did
same.
a zero, but we
Leveled
did,
them off because
last year,
for
we did do
a
a
variety of reasons. Utilization was a little bit down because of COVID and other
Right.
things like that, right? So people weren't
Well,
going
you
to the
can see
doctor
the
as
big
much.
years. I mean, 5 million of the 7.8 million came in 20 and 21.
But as fiscal stewards, we're hardwired to protect fund balances.
So is this
We're going to
going-
talk about it again in a minute, right?
Is this in our general fund or is this a separate?
It's a separate fund. It's called Fund 20.
So it's not
It is
even showing
funded
up on
by
our
the
side.
premiums. And here's the
That's what it
kicker.
should be.
It sits in cash. It's not allowed to be invested in anything else.
I like that look.
So it sits there and we can't really make it work for us. So if we have an excessive balance in there, it's counterproductive, in my view, to have that much money sitting there doing literally nothing.
And I just want to
Correct what I said.
That's why I have her here.
So did you say that fund balance was 300,000? The insurance fund,
No, it's 7.8 million.
7.8 million?
those funds can only be used for self-insurance.
Yeah.
Whereas in the general fund, we can use it for other things. So if we keep building up the fund balance and self-insurance, that's great for the rainy day, but then we could never transfer that money back to the general fund.
Right.
It has to stay there.
It limits our flexibility, is best the way to put it.
And you're getting something on it, aren't you? You must
Well, of
get-
course, interest is interest.
Yep, okay.
But compared to what we can do and what they were able to do with like the CARES money when we had it and the referendum money when we
Sure.
had that money, I mean, we were able to, Marcy was able to work wonders with some of that, some of
Built
those
her up pretty
dollars and
good. I'm
create
kind of with you
actual.
on the whole, take the lower deal. Is there any wellness training or anything?
Yes, we do have a wellness committee, and we're looking to kind of go beyond that. But NIS has also initiated a Springbuck system, which basically is pulling all of our claims data from Medica, so it can show us the majority of the diagnoses among our population, so we can kind of have an idea of where to target our time and energy. So if we have a high claims utilization under diabetes, we know that that's an area that we want to do some proactive wellness strategies. So that's been really helpful. That just started, so we're starting to get that data. But we have done other wellness activities through the committee. We kind of bring some ideas through.
NIS helps you with this, right? They don't just dump this all on you guys.
They do help us with this.
And then we could gradually introduce other programs that you're probably used to in the private world where you have things like biometric screening and premiums dictated by your participation in biometric screening.
I don't have that.
So what that is you come here and you say, okay, here's your premium, but if you and your spouse agree to take, to have a little mini physical, they do a blood test and a blood pressure check and all of this stuff, if you agree to take that biometric screening, you get a lower premium. And then what happens is you get a report back that shows you where you're at from a risk category perspective, and then that's a wellness training opportunity to show people that they have a health risk and that they could mitigate it by doing X, Y, and Z.
We reinsure like this. We self-insure now because it's gotten so crazy that no one can afford to work. But then we started this wellness thing, and like we have like a weight loss challenge. And if you don't gain a pound, you don't have to lose weight. But if you don't gain any weight, well, all of a sudden, everyone got trained up on these HSAs, and our claims just have been going down and down and down. And the last couple of years, I shouldn't let the cat out of the bag. I've raised it just a little bit because I'm afraid that the hammer's going to drop, and we're going to have that terrible year. And then it's going to be, I'm going to raise everybody $100 a month, you know? So it's really made a big difference. But, you know, our agent does all that for us. I don't even go to the meetings. It's like it's just handled at all these different locations and no different than you guys. So I'd make sure you're getting your money's worth out of them. But I'm with you on the deal. I think we should go with the lower.
Can you back that
fund
slide?
balance is huge.
Okay.
So the group landed on the 7.9% as a compromise recommendation. And I'm hearing that the 45%, it's a comfortability threshold. Was there any other discussion of why we wouldn't want to go with 6.9%?
I think the concern is that, again, the less that we put into the fund, but if we have another bad year, we don't want to ever get to the point of the double-digit increases, I think is what I could hear most people feeling. When we met a few months ago, kind of where our claims were starting to go like this, there was some caution and saying, hey, it might be at about 13%, and that kind of spooked a lot of us out, to be perfectly honest. And so there was, you know, to Director Boyle's comment way back when, there was a time where there were too many low increases or zeros, and then they were slammed with a huge hike. And so for the members that are part of the committee, you know, that is very fresh in their minds, that they don't want to have that happen again.
So on the premium change column, you can see, you know, there was 20-sums way back in 2000. And that's traumatizing, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yep, and then you have that 2018, a 12% hike, right? That's what you're trying to avoid is peaks and valleys on this. You'd like it to be kind of steady, keeping pace with inflation as much as possible. But of course, medical inflation is difficult to chart because it doesn't follow traditional inflation necessarily. It's generally a little higher.
Chair?
Director Heidman.
Just a couple of additional thoughts going into the future. It appears that some of the comments that I'll be making are, the horse has already left the barn. And trust me, employee benefits are near and dear to my heart and near and dear to employees as well.
Absolutely.
One, paying 100% of a single person's premium, I think, is very generous. They have no skin in the game. I think Director Boyles asked a question about, or brought up biometrics. What about smoking? You know, people that smoke, maybe their premiums should be a little bit higher than those that don't smoke. These are things for future discussion, but I think it's important that I want to be on the record. I just think paying no premium at all is, that's pretty generous, very generous, and you don't have any skin in the game. You don't have any skin in the game. So to me, that's a disincentive. I think we want to be, as Director Donlinger and Director Bowles have brought up, we want to incentivize people to become healthier, et cetera. What about HSAs? Do we have any local banks that are acting as custodian trustees, or are these dollars being sent off to some conglomerate in Cincinnati, Ohio?
Well, and they are part of kind of our third-party vendor who handles our HSAs. So just like Further, who handles FSAs, HSAs, HRAs, they partner with their own bank. So we couldn't just go with, you know, a Brainerd bank and say, hey, we want you to hold all your HSAs, because they don't have that relationship with our third-party administrator.
That's pretty typical in the private sector as well.
I mean, I get that. I totally understand that, that they're going to be using their vendor. Payroll, we offer a lot of different organizations, don't we? Where people can have the direct deposit into their payroll. Actually, we have.
Their bank,
Yeah, probably have, how many? 15?
No, more than that.
Well, in that world,
Wait, 30.
you know, what typically can happen is, like, the individual, if I see where you're going, the individual could designate that their payroll deduction that they do for their HSA contribution could go to the financial organization of their choice. However, because of the Further relationship, the employer contribution would still have to go to the designated custodian that's part of the package. So then they would have two HSAs at that point.
And they could do that. It would just be after tax.
Well, I don't want to get into the weeds on all the regulations, but they have to be afforded the opportunity to transfer their money without penalty.
And they can.
So I was just curious. But my biggest concern was on the self-only. I mean, that's revenue into the kitty.
Yep, and I will say that since I've been here, we've at least hit a dollar amount. I mean, before it was 100% single, 90% family. I mean, so we're now negotiating based on a dollar amount versus just absorbing all the increases always. So, I mean, it's a process. Our employees who have been here a long time are very used to our benefits. When individuals leave and maybe come back, they're like, oh my gosh, I did not realize how much I appreciated those benefits. We do hear that new teachers coming in teary-eyed about how great our benefits are compared to where they've come from. So This district does use that as part of its total compensation. I mean, to retain teachers and retain all of our staff, because it's a huge, huge benefit. And that's where some of our groups, our lower paid groups, we're struggling to get that dollar amount up because we pay so much in benefits. And we have that conversation every time we negotiate, is due to that high amount that we put towards insurance, that we're not able to balance that out to get that hourly wage up.
When it creates bizarre optics, because some people, when they're applying for jobs, aren't capable of discerning the total package, right? They're going to look at the salary and they're going to go, they pay less than these guys, and they don't realize that it's richer over here. And, you know, so in the private sector, they've gotten to where they do these total reward statements where they, at the end of the year, they give you a statement that says, here's everything it cost us to have you as an employee. This is really what you got paid, right, in total. So before you go job shopping and think your grass is greener somewhere, you might want to add all these numbers together. And you'd think after 20 years of doing it, I'd be smart enough to not have that happen. But 5 years ago, I switched jobs, and I learned that one personally.
But it was just some comments or thoughts.
Absolutely.
I think for future, because we absorb 100%. If there's an increase in the premium, we absorb 100%.
Yep, on their base plan.
There's just no skin in the game.
Yep.
I don't think that's the case, Randy. Are we paying 80% on some things, 60% on some people?
Not on premium.
It varies depending.
We pay 100% of the premium?
On single.
For 100%.
Oh, for single.
I'm only talking about single.
Oh, gotcha.
But not on all plans.
Yep, you're right.
So it's all dependent on their base plan.
So before somebody motions a percentage, I just want to reiterate the one thing, that to an extent, whatever number we pick tonight, that's just step one in the process that's going to sort of dictate how we negotiate with these bargaining units going forward based on our budgetary constraints and total compensation package. So keep that in mind as we go to the next step here, please.
I'll make a motion, we do the 7.9. I'm with Angie on let's cushion the blow if next year's bad. I like the 6.9, but what the hell?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion from Director Dondelinger at 7.9% increase per the committee recommendation, and a second from Director Spear. Is there further discussion or questions for Angie and Marcy? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Good discussion.
Thanks, you guys.
Thank you.
Care if we have a 1 minute, 2 minute break?
Okay, so a recess has been requested for 2 minutes, 5 minutes. Let's do 5 minutes. Nobody can really do 2 minutes, so we will go into recess for 2 minutes. Do we need a motion for that? We are recessed 5 minutes, please. We'll return at 8:08.
Thank you for letting us stand. Next on the agenda, we'll have a light calisthenic.
No, absolutely. Thank you.
We'll have to wait till everybody gets back. We'll find out. No, I'm fine. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
It was at the Capitol.
Because I'm going to make a motion that we have catheters for all board members and then nicotine patches for DJ for all the future meetings.
I know.
I am not going to second that.
But I don't know. Is that why he's taking your break, you think?
Sometimes.
I would say it could be.
I get neither confirm nor deny this. I don't follow him around.
I thought when Randy was going on about that, I could feel a little bit.
This health thing, there's so many layers that there's a lot we can do better. Hi.
You too.
Okay, sorry.
We're ready.
It's hard to get mad at the crowd when the board keeps talking. All right, so where are we? We are on to action item number 5, I believe, which is the approval of the first reading of the revised MSBA policies as presented, policies 405 and 430. Angie, please.
Yes, so this will be the first and final is what my recommendation is. The veterans preference policy, there were absolutely 0 changes. It is just a review of that policy. There is statutory reference that kind of precludes this policy, so we will continue to follow that. And emergency sick leave just really has minor changes now that we don't have an assistant superintendent. That was struck. And then item number 7 on the emergency sick leave, I also removed as it was kind of repetitive with another item.
Motion.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Director Donnelly with a second by Director Spear to approve policies 405 and 430 as presented as first and final reading. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up we have the approval of the YMCA aquatics agreement as presented. Anne Marie.
Good evening. I asked Shane Riffle, the CEO of the Brainerd YMCA, to join me tonight so he can answer any questions that you have. I'm pleased to present to you an agreement that we've been working on that would provide operation of our Brainerd High School Aquatics Center by the Brainerd Family YMCA. There's a link in your agenda to the agreement, and then I handed out paper copies as well. Through this collaboration, it'll allow us to increase our opportunities for community members to use the facility for programming such as swimming lessons and aquatic fitness, and take advantage of the YMCA's expertise in the area of aquatics. They employ an aquatics director who is able to train lifeguard, do lifeguard training, hiring, staffing, and all that, which is really what we need. We don't have anyone on staff to do that. So this agreement was drafted and reviewed by a committee of myself and Shane, Megan Belch, who's their aquatics director, our high school principal, Andrea Rusk, our director of buildings and grounds, Reed TC, and our athletic director, Jack Freeman. And so we worked together to draft this and make some changes. It's also been reviewed by our board policy and committee relations committee, and then our district attorney and insurance also went through this and made quite a few changes throughout, revisions. So now I present to you a nearly complete agreement. There's a couple little dates and different things that we'll need to add if we have your approval to move forward with this.
Questions for Anne Marie and Shane?
Mr. Chair.
Director Ward.
Thank you. Perhaps stop me if I'm saying something I'm not supposed to.
Okay.
Either one of you, please. A little birdie landed on my shoulder the other day when I was over at the high school and told me that the potential for training lifeguards may be pursued through this agreement. Is that correct?
Correct, and it already kind of is. So we offered a lifeguard training class that Megan taught this, I guess it started winter semester. And do you know how many students she ended up with? A handful of students this time.
It was offered, I think, just a matter of a week before the semester started.
Yeah, it was kind of
we
a...
had 4, but
Yep.
there's more people. I believe all 4 have obtained employment. So it's a good opportunity for both.
And we plan to continue that, hopefully to continue to build staff and opportunities for Brainerd High School students.
That little bird also told me that the numbers for next year have significantly increased for that opportunity. And I asked if WSI is would be part of it as well. Now, I think this is awesome. I think it's awesome that we are going to be able to use our pool to train kids to be lifeguards, which is, there's a as you know, there's a shortage of, but it's also good for the kids. It's like a service learning kind of model. And I'm always, we'll get about that later, but but also, is there a potential for WSI as well?
Yes, they do part of the curriculum's swim instruction.
Will that be during, if there's a high school class on that, would that be during a high school class?
Yes.
Because it's a semester-long class, she had time to cover all that, so.
Awesome. Sorry.
No, so thank you, Director Ward. And in fairness to the rest of you, Director Heidman and I, Director Heidman chairs the committee, and I sat on the committee that where this was brought up and discussed in some detail. It's got win-win written all over it.
Yeah.
There's almost, you know, I mean, we can talk some more, but I mean, it allows us to utilize the pool facility to a much greater extent. It allows us to bring expertise in that we can't possibly hire from outside.
Right.
And it helps us potentially create even a little bit of revenue off of the pool facility. I mean, there's just, you know, there's not much to pick apart here, in my opinion.
Yeah. I am just thrilled about this partnership, and I can't tell you how many people have asked about an opportunity to get in and swim in the new pool, in people from the community. And so I'm so excited that we're going to be able to provide that through you guys. So thank you for saying yes to this.
Are you done?
Yeah, go ahead.
My only concern is, and I didn't bring it up at the committee meeting, but are we going to be limiting the usage of the diving boards? Does that bring into consideration some extra liabilities? I think it would, but I don't know if there's plans how that would be handled or not.
We haven't developed specific operating procedures right now, but I can tell you that it would most likely be a part of a structured program and not just open diving.
Yeah.
Those days in aquatics have pretty much come and gone.
Yeah. No, I'm all in favor of this too. I mean, it's
one of the big benefits.
Facility is absolutely, I mean, let's use it. And it's not going to cost us any money.
Correct. One of the big benefits too is the YMCA's policies are all very safety driven, so they'll help us come up with some operating, use policies that we don't have the knowledge to do on our own. So it'll be great.
I'll make a motion that we approve this resolution.
Second.
Great. So we have a motion from Director Brecken with a second by Director Ward to approve the contract as presented. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Contract approved.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anne Marie. Thank you, Shane.
Good luck, guys.
Looking forward to it. It's going to be fun.
Shane. Look how fast we did that one.
Now you jinxed it.
Keep it going. Let's go.
Next up, we have the approval of revising policy number 714, fund balance as presented. Marcy.
All right. So this was presented as an agenda item on the Finance Committee meeting on April 26th, and the discussion headed towards, let's bring this to the full board and have some discussion. The current policy was updated March of 2021 to 10% of the annual general fund budget for the unassigned fund balance. Previous policy was 5 to 7. The state recommendation is 3 months of operating or 25%. You guys have heard me say that. You're new, some of you, but you still have heard me say it. And then I just want to review some historical information, and then there'll be time for questions and board discussion. So this is the historical fund balance for the last about 10 years. You can see it's fluctuated between 8 and 7. And then in 2021, we did have a substantial increase because of the CARES funding. We were able to supplant a lot of our expenses with the CARES funds and build that fund balance up, which is why we looked at the policy in 2021 to discuss, should we be increasing it? 21-22, it did go up a little bit. And then this is what it means in terms of percentages. So we're at about 12% at the end of last year. And we are projected to be at the end of this year at $10,499,000 or 11.28%. So this is where I want to open it up to questions, board discussion. Right now, we're a little bit above the policy. Is it something you guys want to increase, keep as is? I'll let you take it from there.
Dr. Boyles, can I add one? So based on the presentation you gave us with a 30,000-foot view, basically, if you'd add, so we're at 11.2, if like everything was exact fact on that sheet, it would take us down to 9.8.
Yep.
Somewhere right around there. So if you want to just put another dot, that's if everything we predicted was 100% accurate on that sheet, which it's not even close. There's always like a 1 to 2% chance of error on that sheet.
Correct.
Because it's a moving target. But just to kind of keep that in mind, reason we saw that bubble was CARES money. We know we have a CARES cliff coming. So we're being very mindful of that cliff. So we all of a sudden don't, a year from now, say, oh, we didn't know that was going away. So we've slowly been folding that back in.
And in 2021, just to give a little background on that, obviously, the board members did not want to go to 25 because they didn't want it to be an unattainable goal, right? Something that we want to be able to reach. So that's where the 10% came in.
It dawns on me, I think I'm the only board member that voted on that, that's here tonight. Director Ward, you're on the committee. Do you have any other insight?
Well, Marcia did a good job of bringing it up and showing the statistics and the data and everything else. My only comment during the finance committee was that, and I know we're always talking about 3-month expenditures and make sure we have it or whatever, but I think, in my opinion, I'm in favor of keeping the current percent of where we are at for the fund balance. Has the current 11.2?
10% in the policy.
10%, yeah, that's
The
right.
policy's
We're at
right,
11.2, it's 10%, yeah.
Director Dunley, you're also on that committee. Any thoughts?
Well, obviously we can't raise it because what are we going to do? We're going to have to completely redo the budget if we wanted to raise it. So I think we should stick with the 10% for now, get through next year, see how things, first of all, let's see how things shake out this spring, the legislature. And I don't think we should lower it, but I don't know how on earth we're going to go from 10% to 25%.
Yeah.
I mean, we'd have to come up with $15 million. And that'd be kind of tough to do. That'd be quite some cutting going on around here. And I don't think it's really possible. The other thing I wonder about, and John, maybe you know this, or Marcy, or Heidi, somebody, is where do they come up with their 25% number? I understand it's 3 months of expenses, but did they just pull it out of the sky? I mean, what's going to happen? I mean, how do we go upside down and need 3 months worth of income to pay our bills? You know, you follow me? I mean, it's like.
So prior to my time, the state would withhold payments. Like if there was a shutdown or if they were having some cash flow issues, then they would withhold. We get paid on the 15th and the 30th of every month by the state. So if they were ever to stop their payments, this would be our.
So they're warning us.
Well, I wouldn't say that.
Well, kind of.
That policy.
They're the ones that are going to get us.
That recommendation's been in place for quite some time. Like, it's not like it's new.
Yeah, every auditor will tell you.
Yeah.
That's just, that's like industry standard, 25%.
Well, maybe we should set it as a long-term goal, maybe not tonight, but we should set it as a long-term goal that we continue to, like you guys took it to 10, maybe we should try to take it to 12.5.
Well, the spirits of Directors Blacklance and Hagelin are thick in this room right now. That was fundamentally what we were trying to do.
Well, you
because
did
I think
it.
we were at 7 or whatever it was, and then we, so the idea was, but then of course with COVID and CARES and all this other stuff going on, the picture's so muddy that to try to shine a laser through that to a fixed point on the horizon is pretty difficult right now.
It feels like there's just too much unknown right now, and I feel like it's, if we're in a situation where we're cutting or, having to spend some of that money anyway, I feel like it's not the time to be talking about how much money we can put in the savings account. It's time to talk about how do we pay the electric bill and pay for gas.
And Marcia, Mr. Chair, Marcia, can't we review this after the legislature is done or halfway through we can always review, right?
Yep,
great
whatever
point.
you want.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great point.
When we know a little more, that might be a good idea.
So on the agenda is, to look at the policy, and if there's no action, then we can move forward with that.
Mr. Chair?
Director Heidman.
On the policy, just a recommendation. It is sometimes very confusing. What is a restricted, what is a committed, and what is an assigned, and what is unassigned? If somehow in this policy, we could put a very simple, understandable definition as a thought.
Got it.
Hopefully that isn't going to stop us from approving this tonight, but it's just a thought. It just makes it easier for me to understand, some other board members, and maybe the public.
Yep.
So.
And procedurally, if there is no motion, the policy stays as is.
So we're fine.
Correct.
Is this general fund money that we can do whatever we want with?
Yes.
Okay. So it's not even like we can just take a percentage of our total. It's just the general fund, which is about 60% of our total, right?
Right.
Okay, got it.
Okay, and that's my point. You said general fund, right? I thought unassigned funds can be used for any purpose.
So general fund, the 10% is what we're talking about in the general fund, but there are unassigned and other funds.
Okay.
So, yes.
And
Thank you for.
and then there's those other funds, and then we got the other funds over here, and then we got the healthcare fund.
That's what I'm saying.
Well, I think, Mr. Chair, I think Director Heidman's suggestion is a great suggestion. I think it clarifies and clears up a lot of questions that have been raised in prior years, quite frankly.
That said, I would entertain a motion for revising the policy to include Director Heidman's suggestions.
Okay.
But not changing the percentage.
Right.
Yeah, I have no problems with the percentage.
Okay.
Did you entertain a motion, Matt?
I entertained it. It was very entertaining.
Somebody want to make that motion?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
All right, we have a motion from Director Heidman with a second by Director Dondelinger to revise policy 714 to reflect Director Heidman's suggestions of clearer definitions of fund types and balance types.
Yep. Got it.
Any further discussion?
So does that come back to us then next month?
Yeah, it'll have to be reread and brought back to us, and I would suspect next meeting.
Budget's next month, so can I?
Maybe in July.
Okay. Yeah.
We're not changing anything anyway, except for the wording.
Yep.
Okay.
Any other discussion or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Thank you, Marcy.
Thank you.
You don't get to leave yet, though. We have you for one more. So now we're doing the approval for the first reading of the revised MSBA policy 704, which is the development and maintenance of an inventory of fixed assets and a fixed asset accounting system.
Super exciting. This was also brought to the Finance Committee. There was nothing written at the district as far as what our threshold was. It was just kind of this unknown or unsaid that it was $2,500, which is low. The federal guidelines is $5,000. So you can see in this policy, I just added after UFARs with a capitalization level that equals or exceeds $5,000, meaning we would only add assets that have that $5,000 value or greater. This will save on staff time, and then we also have it written somewhere so it's not for somebody to try to guess what that number is.
Motion.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Director Dondelinger with a second by Director Ward to approve policy 704 as presented. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Marcy.
Thanks, Marcy.
And just for the record, it's pretty cool when your stuff's not exciting. When your stuff gets exciting. My cardiologist doesn't like that.
Noted.
Oh, you're still up. Next one up for bid here is the approval of the 2023-2024 transportation contract with Reichert Bus Company as presented.
So this contract mimics what was done prior with the addition of 2.1.4 interior cameras. There was language in there previously. However, we did add that the district would contribute up to $60,000 toward the actual cost of new bus cameras. This had been done prior to my time, I guess, where a contribution is made, and then once we purchase those cameras, it's up to the company to maintain and replace and all that. But we make a contribution. We're going to do that with our Safe Schools funds, so not anything to do with the unassigned. And then the next change was in the 2.11.2, just clarifying trainers. So throughout the document, there was trainer, and they do have other people who are also trainers, so they wanted to clarify that. And then the last change was the Exhibit B rates. 3% was put on all the previous rates for each year. Otherwise, everything else pretty much stayed the same. Anything I'm missing?
And just for the new boards, background knowledge, we put out a request for proposals last school year. So we opened up bids for busing companies statewide and continued with our local partner of Reichert. So one of the questions we've had of, are you looking, have you considered, we went through that whole process last year. I think Director Spear, Director Boyles, you were there, but that's been a question that's been posed. In exploring all of that, the bus driver shortage is not just Brainerd, it's statewide, it's national-wide. I know our community has endured a lot this year with buses having to be canceled, and I give a huge shout out. I think Fran's sitting back there, she's still awake. Normally she's up between 4 and 5. But coming up with backup routes and alternative routes, and I just, our community has been patient, but that is the challenge we've given back to Reichert's, is that, you know, you have to keep working to get drivers because we continually cancel routes daily. You know, we have field trips. I'm looking at the Forest View staff. There's a field trip that's supposed to be going, and our staff are frustrated because they can't get off on time because our routes are trying to get kids on time. So it's really been a challenge. And so Reichert's has committed to working diligently to continue to recruit. Their last recruitment efforts, they did get drivers, but that's going to be their constant challenge. So it has to improve. And we have worked with our neighboring districts. You know, we have good partners, north, south, east, and west of us, that when they can offer support, they do. But at the same point in time, when we're asking for support, they haven't had support. So we are searching everywhere.
Do we get other bids?
We had one other company
Okay.
that responded, and it was a significant.
Yeah, it was a seven-figure increase over what we were paying.
It was just I was just curious if.
And part of that is you look at reestablishing. I mean, when you're going to be new to the area and you look at the number of buses we're requiring, we cover 516 square miles. That's hiring a lot of staff. Our drivers, I don't know about you, but I wouldn't want to be a bus driver. I'm a great bus para when they need one, but that's a lot of responsibility, and our drivers that we've had have been doing an amazing job. It's a thankless job.
So a couple quick things. One, I'm going to vote in favor of approving this contract, but I'm going to editorialize a little bit before we get all the way to the finish line on it, because I was involved in this contract last year too. And what I would say is it's fairly easy to approve this one tonight, in my view, because it's just a percentage increase over a whole bunch of stuff that there was a fairly painful process a little over a year ago where the folks from Reichert's came forward in good faith, and really we had a lot to solve. And that got solved in that last round of discussions, and that was through, in no small part, due to work by Marcy and Lane Larson and Heidi, and gosh, I'm going to forget a bunch of people, Norby, and people from Reichert's as well. I mean, it was not easy to get this done last year, but we got it done. That having been said, the contract as written has mechanisms in there for us, and I think it's going to behoove us down the road to look at if we get into next school year and we're having rampant issues with route fulfillment, we may have to look to invoke certain sections of this contract that we currently are not, namely financial penalties for non-fulfillment of routes. Because again, it gets said at the board table at least once a quarter. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. If they're not able to recruit more drivers, then perhaps some fines as permitted under the contract might incentivize them to do something a little bit different. But to Heidi's point, as it happens, I had occasion a few weeks ago to review some of the video from some of our school buses. And I'm going to tell you something. You could not pay me enough to be a bus driver.
You couldn't pay me enough to be a teacher.
Yep, same thing. But in this particular case, we have some, what I consider to be something we need to review down the road, and it's editorializing, and I realize it doesn't have to do specifically with the contract. We have safety issues on our school buses with child behavior. And a bus driver has limitations on what they can control and what they can do. And when they get involved, our parents come forward with a totally different perspective of what those children are doing on that bus. And as board members, we need to be resolved in the idea that sometimes we just have to call a spade and say, you know what, the kid's at fault in this scenario, and we got to start removing some kids from some buses because the behavior's out of control. It's like a rolling prison yard on some of these bus routes. And that's, again, the world according to Kevin, but we need to get this under control. And I think it's, you know, and easy for me to say I'm not running again in 2 years, but, you know, we got to get this under control. We got to support those bus drivers because of the environment that they live in, just like we have to support our teachers and everybody else. I don't mean to single them out, but that's what we're talking about tonight. So I'm in favor of this contract. I'm actually gratified that the Morans and everybody else at Reichert came forward in good faith and did a great job with this. I think it's a reasonable price increase based on where we're at with everything, fuel costs and everything else. So enough said. I just wanted to pass all that along because I think while we'll finish the contract tonight, I think we're not done with issues related to our busing and our routes. That's going to be before this body, before we get too far into next school year. Thank you. Yes, Director Heidman.
Just to ask a question, I'm looking at these fines, et cetera. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, if a route doesn't run, they don't get paid.
Correct. So when you talk about,
So if a bus doesn't run, so if bus 75 isn't running, they don't get paid the $310.48.
so when you look at
So
some of
isn't that a way that we're kind of pushing back? I mean, well, they haven't fulfilled their contract, but yet I get where you're coming from, Director Boyles, on the fines, because it's at our discretion, and I don't think it's ever been imposed.
Correct.
Based upon our conversations. It's never been imposed. Yeah.
And I'm not aggressively advocating that we do so. I'm aggressively advocating that we get it on the table.
Right.
You know, so that everything's on the table. And it was more to call out the fact that these mechanisms are in the contract. Therefore, since they're in the contract, that's why I'm in favor of it, because it gives us the flexibility and the capability of levying those if we get to an untenable situation.
Yep. And this might not be a fair question, Marcy, but how much money have we not paid them this year because of buses not running? Is it a substantial amount?
Yes, and I can send you that number because I don't have it right off the top of my head.
Yeah. I was just curious.
Yeah. No, it's.
So a 3% increase, not having buses running, it might turn out to be a 0% increase.
Can I add to that, though? We made it very clear to Reicherts that when they have a driver, we want the route.
Most definitely.
We repeatedly said that. So yeah, there's cost savings, but at a huge expense to our families. And so we have it budgeted. We want the routes, we want the drivers, we want the service. So.
And I love the alternative options that we came up with towards the end of the school year.
You can thank
you, Fran.
Fran and Beck Kubish
That was
and Gina.
really, there was alternative options available, and that's tremendous. Yeah. Because, I don't want to see kids not riding on the buses that they're supposed to, just because we can save $300 a day.
It's extraordinarily good news that LC is back in the saddle over there at Reichert's. That's big for us.
Oh, that the person that left, he came back?
I didn't know that.
So, yeah, I think that's big. But I guess that was the other editorializing point I was trying to make. I think this is all well and good, but at some point, the district, specifically this board, needs to back up the administration, because for them to improve their ability to recruit and retain drivers, we got to back those people up. We can't allow out-of-control situations on these buses to cause us to lose drivers and cause Fran to have to deal with profanity-laced tirades from parents on a pretty much regular basis. It's not acceptable, and we shouldn't have to accept it, not as a district and not as citizens of this district.
So I have a question. What are the rules? I don't know, Marcy, Heidi, for these bus drivers? I've talked to numbers and numbers of teachers that are being told some pretty crazy things by second and third graders. It doesn't seem like a very fun work environment to me. So what are the goals that you're setting, principals are setting? Are we actively working at getting this, what I'm thinking, and maybe I'm completely out in left field, I don't think I am, these behavioral problems under control? From what I've been told, from what I've read, is that ever since COVID, everyone thought things were gonna be better, and when the kids came back, they've just been a little wilder and a little more, hitting, biting, spitting. And so we've got teacher shortage in the United States. We've got a bus driver shortage in, Brainerd School District. Do we have any plans, any goals? Are we setting any, are we working towards this? Like do we need to change our policies? Is it something that we need to get involved in? Or are you guys on top of it?
So we do have a whole bus discipline process, and so we really look at our drivers are the main priority of that, so they have the ability to invoke. So they do a bus referral, and there's very clear warning, step 1, step 2. And so there are students who lose their privilege to ride on that bus. So first step is we really try to work directly with the driver, and the drivers working with the family or the student. And that seems to be working fairly well. Sometimes it's a delay from driver to principals, or principals take on a lot of responsibility with that once the student steps into the building, and then communicating back with the family. So again, there's bus training at the beginning of the year. The other thing we have to be really cognizant of is some of our kids get on a bus close to 6 a.m. and don't get home till 6 p.m. 516 square miles, kids are on the bus for over 2 hours. That's a long time. So that's again why we want our routes back. We're committing to the safety of making a contribution towards cameras, so we have better backup for that, to be able to have more accurate information and be able to respond quicker too. So there's a lot of pieces.
I don't want to be critical, but these are things we already have, right?
Correct.
So what are we going to do going forward to try to get this problem under control? Because obviously, definition of insanity, let's not do the same thing we did last year and the year before, because it's not working. So are we going to adjust? You guys can adjust on the fly. You don't have to do everything for the year, do you? So,
There's more work to be done, that's for sure.
Well, tons of it's situational too. But I would
sure
tell
it
you,
is.
if you took the
But if
first
you've gotta
20 seconds
empower
of the
somebody.
bus video that I watched,
I can't imagine.
K through 4, and submitted to the Motion Picture Association of America, it would come back with an R rating in the first 20 seconds.
I promise you that I swept the bus at Nisswa School more than any other fifth grader ever did. Because that was the penalty. And, I was late for class, so they pulled my hair a little bit, but you straighten out sooner or later.
I do want to put some parameters on this
Oh, yeah, I do.
conversation. There are lots of great bus rides and lots of great things, and, the only time that a board member gets pulled into watching a
Right, we
video
see
is
the
usually
worst of the
something
worst.
went wrong. So
Oh,
let's
I'm
not
sure
say
of
that
that.
that's the
For sure.
standard.
But my point in bringing it up isn't to really call out that we have this, rampant issue. It's to create a cultural shift to where we're supporting the bus drivers to help Reichert's in getting bus drivers to come in.
Absolutely.
Because right now, if you talk to the bus drivers, they're fighting with one hand tied behind their back.
But
Maybe
so are
not the best
paras.
analogy in the world, but
I think the paras and the teachers are too.
of course,
We gotta,
that's another contract, that's another day. Right now, we're talking about buses. That's
all right, we're on the buses. I was one of those kids that was the first on, last off. Lived right next to the damn bus driver. What are you gonna do?
I encourage you all.
Why do you think you're sitting right next to the chair?
Yeah, if you.
You can hit me with a stick?
You need a motion?
Yep.
Yes, I'll make a motion to approve the contract with Reichert.
I'll
As
second.
presented.
Okay, so we have a motion from Director Spear with a second from Director Brecken to approve the 2023-2024 transportation contract with Reichert Bus Company as presented. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign? All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Marcy. Our last action item, I believe, for the evening is the approval to change the Finance Committee meetings from June 21st, 2023 at 12 o'clock p.m. to June 7th, 2023, and July 19th at 11 o'clock to July 5th, 2023.
Motion.
Second, Mr. Chair, and if, Mr. Chair, if I might just let the rest of the board know and the public know that these changes are being made because, well, number one, hopefully the legislature is done on May 22nd. That's not a given ever. But so hopefully they'll be done with their work, and then we will have more information at that point. And these move the meetings, the finance legislative meetings prior to the board meeting that month. That's why it has been suggested. And we will have more information that we can deal with budgetary things and legislative things and all the other fun stuff we do.
That's great, Clay. Thank you very much, Director Ward. All right, we do have a motion from Director Donnellinger with a second from Director Ward to approve the Finance Committee meeting changes as presented. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All in favor, motion carries. All right, just to go through committee meeting updates, our next up, first up, we'll do student support services and activities with Director Brecken.
Okay. This meeting was held March 22nd. It was the first student support services meeting since our current board took office. The purpose of this committee is to create comprehensive student support services and activities to meet the diverse needs of students. It includes the Student Support Services and Equity Department led by Candace Burkhart and the Activities Department led by Jack Freeman. So I'm going to pick three different key items that we talked about in that meeting. The first was the new overdose medication policy. It's coming from the medical staff and legislation to requiring school districts to have an overdose medication policy in place. Brainerd has had a policy in place at BHS, BLC, and LEC for the past year. We talked about the collaborative services worker contracts and positions, which we addressed at the last board meeting. These positions were funded through the ADSIS grant, but the district has been working on moving the collaborative services workers from Sourcewell to become ISD 181 staff. A new contract was approved at last month's board meeting, aligning with the school schedule, and these positions will be posted internally and externally with planned interviews this month, I believe, right? Okay. And the another item that we talked about is our athletic trainers. The district has a contract for sports medicine provision with Essentia Health. It's a 5-year contract beginning with the 21-22 school year, and the contract is supposed to have Essentia Health providing 2 full-time athletic trainers at BHS, and this contract has not been fulfilled for the past 2 years. Athletic trainers are not mandated at events during the regular season, but they are during postseason play. And I know Jack has done a really good job of trying to get athletic trainers at most of the contact sports, but has difficulty with that. So the 2 positions are both open at this time, and there is a posting for them with incentives. And has that changed at all?
Yeah, the partnership with Essentia has been great. Last time that we met, just so you know, new leadership at Essentia is really committed and made a strong commitment to ensure that we have this in place. They actually put some pretty significant hiring incentives in place, and they had a great response. So I know they were interviewing, so hopefully by the time we start the year, this will be a non-issue, thanks to that new leadership and partnership.
Both Sarah and I sit on that committee, and so we really just got briefed on kind of the 2 various departments, student support services and activities, but this was noteworthy to me. Brainerd currently has 31 different sports with 788 students participating, and our district also offers 24 different clubs and activities. So it's a pretty robust
Is that just the high school?
department.
That was high school.
Yeah, that was high school.
Yeah.
High school.
Right,
There's
that's just
probably-
high school, but, right, yeah,
It's a good deal.
yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Michelle.
Yes,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
DJ, I think you're up with the long-range planning and
I'm up,
facilities.
but I'm passing the buck down to,
Talk to me. So DJ's been all around, I think, the world lately. So the nice thing, our long-range planning is just initial. Biggest thing is our building projects are wrapping up. They're almost done. So what's going to be coming forward to you and then to come in July is we're going to be looking at that long-range planning. Facilities, for example, a lot of our long-range planning dollars have been tied up in building projects. Now those dollars are being freed back up, so we can talk to start making plans. What's our 1-year priority, 3-year priority, 10-year priority? So Reed TC is the director that sits on long-range planning and facilities. And that's about where we were at. So just that initial meeting. More to come.
Thanks.
Perfect. All right, Director Heidman, you're up with policy and community relations.
Yeah, I attended the meeting remotely. Thank you for subbing and taking control of that meeting for me.
You're welcome.
What did we talk about? We talked about a community ed overview. We talked about an overdose policy as well. The biggest thing there is with Narcan and the availability of it in our schools and training and just a lot of things. And then, of course, the FDA has passed. You can get Narcan over the counter now. So there's a lot of moving parts, and the policies. Hopefully, the MSBA will give us some direction as well on that. They're coming out with something. The aquatics agreement we talked about tonight and we signed. So end of report.
Perfect. Thank you, Director Heidman. Next up is curriculum and instruction staff development with Director Spear.
Great. So we met on April 19th, and the purpose of that group is to assist the school board and administration in overseeing district curriculum and professional development for all staff. And so key to that conversation was Director Murtha. And we talked through the continuous improvement process as it relates or applies to staff development and scheduling and structure and curriculum and pretty much everything, and how we set priorities once a year, along with kind of painting a picture of what success looks like for all of those priorities for the district. We also talked through the staff development process and our participation in the ACOMP program, and that we have to have a board approved and approved by MDE plan on file every year for that. And so we're going to be learning more coming up in June, I believe, about that. And then we also talked through the music curriculum that you got to see today. So, good things.
Thank you very much. Finance and Legislative Director Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And as I start, I want to recognize and shout out appreciation because to our teachers, because it's National Teacher Appreciation Week. I want to make sure that the educators understand that we all appreciate and thank them. We heard tonight, you couldn't pay me enough to be a teacher, you couldn't pay me enough to be a bus driver. We heard that tonight. And so we know that the job is tough, and I've been blessed to be able to be around and see some remarkable things in this school district these last, I guess it's been 2 to 3 weeks, but it seems like 2 to 3 years. But no, I want to start out with that. Thank you to all staff, not just the teachers, but all staff for everything they do. Finance and budget, we had a great committee meeting, and we voted on a lot of the things that we talked about at the Finance and Budget Committee, and I just want to bring up a few things that is still within the Finance and Legislative Committee. We had talked about credit card usage, which we are going to continue. We're going to continue on all these topics, but credit card usage, sub rates, expense reimbursement policy, outstanding fees policy, the school resource officer, and then the strategic planning the Strategic Planning for Finance and Legislative Committee has identified a stable budget as a main goal. So those are the things that we'll be talking about in the future. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Director Ward. So last up is me with personnel and benefits. But again, this is the first round. This was the first round for all 6 of these meetings that you heard 5 of the 6 recaps so far. This is a new structure for us that we implemented with the new board coming in January. With the idea being, back in the day, we were doing 2 school board meetings a month sometimes to keep up with the workload, and the idea was to farm this out to these committees. Each of these committees, for the benefit of those of you watching, have 2 board members on each one. So even though you have 1 board member reporting, like Director Ward just reported on Finance and Legislative, there's another board member that sits with him on that. So we're, each one of us chairs 1 committee and is the second board member on the other committee. And then the other theme you probably saw as they did their updates was a lot of what they did in their recap was stuff we talked about or approved at tonight's board meeting agenda, and that's the very purpose of these committees, is to discuss this stuff in more detail, get into the weeds on it, and then come forward to the board with informed recommendations on what to do to streamline the process at this table, in theory. So with that in mind, on the personnel and benefits side, that was Director Ward and I sit on that committee. So the sub rates were talked about in that committee as well. What we're talking about there is really taking a hard look. Angie Bennett's done a tremendous job of doing some research on what school districts around us are doing in terms of their substitute teacher pay and things like that. So we'll have some recommendations shortly on how to perhaps make some changes to what we're doing there to make sure we're getting the subs that we need. We also talked about, as you guys saw tonight, legislative update. Dr. Hahn kind of updated us on where we're at with that. I think the only one we really didn't delve into tonight that didn't get discussed was the family and medical leave one that's still dangling around out there. Any comment on that one as far as you know?
Still there?
I believe MSBA is doing board member updates every Friday morning, so we can log into MSBA and see their legislative recap on what's happening this week. And so that was part of what we went over. All the insurance stuff that we talked about tonight, we covered all of that as well as it relates to the benefits and insurance part. And then we looked at the employee groups, the various employee groups that have expiring contracts coming up that were in the process of either beginning or in further along the process of the negotiation of the new contracts for those folks. So that's kind of what we covered in there. All right, so next up would be informational. We'll do a Brainerd Public Schools Foundation update. Sarah.
3 quick things, maybe not so quick. We had the scholarship event last week, and there were more than 500 people in attendance for these seniors, either with the seniors giving scholarships or supporting them. It was standing room only, and it was awesome. And there was more than $1 million worth of scholarships given to those students last week. 180,000 of those were from the Brainerd Public Schools Foundation, but it was just fantastic to see the generosity and the caring and commitment to those students. Pines for a Purpose fundraiser coming up May 17th at Jack Pine, and we are collecting used warrior gear through June 30th, and that'll be offered for sale next school year or end of August to help raise funds for the student need pantries. That's it.
Cool.
Great. All right, Equity Task Force. Michelle.
So the last couple of months, our committee broke up into 2 groups, and one group talked about behavior concerns in the district, and the other group talked about social emotional learning concerns or offerings. From that, we generated a list of questions that we discussed last time as a point of discussion to come up with recommendations, and it looks like we'll be ready to give recommendations to the board in July, and I think at that point, we'll just kind of do an end-of-the-year report of all the different kinds of things that the Equity Committee has done.
Thank you, Michelle. I believe we have a meeting tomorrow.
Tomorrow, correct.
The next meeting of that group. And next up is Marcy with the business services report.
You guys should
Last but not least.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you're sick of me by now. In your packet is the enrollment report. This will be the last report for the year. Some years we do not go into June, so hence why we don't have a June report. We're down 106 from the beginning of the year, or 1.8%. The 4-year average is normally 1.5, so we're a little bit high, but we hopefully will close out the year okay. The MARS coordinator does submissions to the state. We'll have some preliminary data reports out in August. So she takes all these student and puts it in for attendance, and we get the ADMs. As a reminder, it's not always apples to apples. So any questions on that?
We're trending a part though where we're staying above our budget projection.
Right.
That's the other thing to add.
Fingers crossed. And then the financial report, nothing new really to note. Earlier we talked about unemployment, and I just wanted to correct. When I said the 0.7%, 0.35 is employer, that's the paid family and medical leave. So just FYI. I don't know if I made that clear.
Yeah, that's not the unemployment.
Yeah.
I know when you said that, I was.
Yeah.
I might have crisscrossed that, sorry.
Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Marcy.
Thank you.
Superintendent's report, Dr. Hahn.
What Marcy didn't add in that budget report is that anybody who's maintained through the entire meeting should get a bonus. So thank you for your patience, especially to our staff and administration. I know these make for long days, and just being physically present means a great deal to be involved in our our activities. So quick things for me. Tomorrow, or Wednesday, May 10th, is our second community key stakeholder meeting. It's been moved to Forest View Middle School, so we have more space and a bigger screen. Hot meal will be served at 4:45. We start promptly at 5. Sarah highlighted the amazing scholarship senior recognition night. $1 million awarded to people in the room is very impressive. And a huge shout out to our foundation. One question was asked about the proficiency with our Indigenous students, and what's been super impressive, and I wish I had the data in front of me, they celebrated last week their graduates with a round dance, and I want to say the numbers tripled in graduates. The list of graduates is long, and it continues to grow, and they're making a point to celebrate 4th grade, 8th grade, and high school. So they are seeing the results. National National Teachers Week, I'm starting to get tired myself. I think Ms. Harmer is an exemplary example. For those of you who've been able to sit in her seminar class and Mr. Hewitt's research class, huge shout out to Rio that she jumped at the chance to share. So she was the first one to tell Ms. Harmer, I'll go talk to them. So you're seeing our why in action. And I think that was really highlighted with little Dylan. When you talk about staff and people that are doing what they do every day, that's the difference they're making for kids. So I was really appreciative of Rio coming with us tonight. So that is my superintendent's report. Thank you.
I got one thing. You want to go ahead, Randy?
Question, Dr. Hahn, on the stakeholder partner ed meeting on the 10th, are there a different group of board members that will be going to that, or will it be the same?
No, the committee stays the same, but if you, as a board, if you'd like to come for dinner and kind of say hello to people, you're sure welcome, but that working committee of 65 stays the same for that second meeting. So, and then what's going to happen is recommendations are going to come out of there, and then it's going to come back to the board for a lot of direct work. So.
Okay.
Director Donnelly, you have something to ask?
Superintendent Hahn, so I was reading your director update from Friday, and it says, members of the SEL committee attended a children's mental health conference this week in Duluth. This is funded through grants, fine. My question is that the equity committee?
No. No.
So what's the SEL committee?
So there's a separate group of administrators that have been working. We've been focusing on the last 3 years on looking at multi-tiered systems of support. So we have a group of administrators reading, researching, studying what that means for a system for multi-tiered system support. And then we have another group of administrators that are really looking at what do we need to do for instruction to improve students' behaviors and outcomes and relationships with one another. So that's what falls under that social emotional learning. So there's been 2 work groups going. That SEL group, Candace wrote a grant with the Minnesota Department of Education, and they funded further learning for them. So that group went up to the mental health conference in Duluth.
So they're administrators, but there's 2 of them, 2 groups.
There's 2 groups, so our whole administrative team, so just like we talk about buildings having to have continuous improvement, our leadership team also has a continuous improvement plan. Our 2 major focus areas for learning and studying and creating system change is multi-tiered system support and social emotional learning.
So I know everybody's tired, and I'm kind of sick of this too.
Okay, let's go for it.
But here's my question, is the group will be meeting with elementary teacher representatives on May 2nd to continue embedding life and social skills into our curriculum. And I guess my question is I'm new to this, but I'm starting to wonder when we're going to get around to the 800-pound gorilla in the room, and that 65% of 8th graders in Minnesota can't read at an 8th grade, can't do math at an 8th grade level. Do these kids have enough time? Do we have them long enough to add all these new? It feels to me like they just keep adding new subjects. There's new ways to teach. It's more experimenting. It feels to me like experimenting. I mean, you could straighten me out if you like, but it's like, oh, now we're going to add this to the deal. But in the meantime, do you feel like the kids are prepared?
So here's what I can tell you. So, and you kind of, I think Rio did a good job on the presentation. So, when we talk about social emotional learning, for a lot of people, it's become a buzzword or a catchword. And what everybody's talking about children's mental health, children's behavior concerns. How do we do this? So when you talk about kindness, respect, how to have a conversation, how to be kind, all those things, that's really what this instruction's about. And so we look at kids, if they don't feel like they're connected, if they don't feel like they're respected, they struggle to learn. And so we're really looking at systematically, the minute a kid walks in our door,
be it early childhood, pre-K, what are we doing and what are we prioritizing in teaching those social skills, those emotional regulation skills, those communication skills, those behavior skills? That's really what it's about. A lot of it's hit or miss. I don't want to call it hit or miss. There's teachers doing lots of things. This is really giving us a chance to look at it systematically. So it's not one more thing. It's just how can we do it collectively as a whole system to have a greater impact?
And I would argue, you know, that was the question that was brought up earlier. What else are we doing to address these behaviors on the school bus or in the classroom? I think this is the what else. Like those kids can't learn, and the kids around them can't learn until they feel safe, their needs are met, and that's part of it. That's a huge part of it.
Like you walk in Forest View and the first thing you see is be respectful, be responsible, be yourself, right? So that's the Forest View way. So Forest View has their way, and Harrison has their way, and BHS has their way. And what we're really looking at, how as a kid, as they move across our system, do they know our expectations, and how are we teaching those expectations? How are we supporting those expectations when it comes to basically, how am I a good, responsible human being, and how am I good to the other human beings around me? That's really what it's all about. And so it's giving time and embedding that. Sometimes it's at a morning meeting, sometimes it's at an advisor-advisee time, but administrators have been spent time researching and learning so we can do it collectively. So there's a holistic pre-K 21 approach. And so that small group went and got some extra training to look at how our district's doing it really well, what are they seeing as exemplary. But all these things, teach them, we need to be more concerned about the behaviors. We need to be more concerned about mental health. That's what this is.
Well, my question is that what were we doing 10 or 20 years ago? As Mr. Murtha at our meeting on the strategic plan said that we have this delta, we're 5 or 6% above the state all the time. Well, the state is dropping. So that's like the old deal, if everyone's jumping off the bridge, are you gonna jump off the bridge? And so my question is that we have these behavioral problems on the bus. We have teachers getting injured. One of them's here that told me that they thought she had to go to the hospital because they thought that she had a broken leg. All these problems are happening. I don't remember these things happening when I went to school. And I mean, I know I'm getting pretty ancient. I don't even know if I can remember school, but I just had kids that got done, 10 years ago. And I don't remember things being quite this wild. These all seem like newfound ideas. And it seems to me like they're not working real hot when we can't keep drivers. I mean, no one wants to be a teacher anymore. I thought when I was at the Chamber of Commerce thing we were at, Randy, and Sarah, you were there, we were there for that forum, and they asked about school safety. All I could think about was shootings, things like this. I didn't know it was safety for the kids, safety for the teachers, safety for the administration, safety for the bus drivers. I had no idea. I wouldn't want to get in a scrap with a 16, 17-year-old young guy that kicked my butt, I'm just wondering how long do we continue down this road before you start to take back and start to, I've talked to you about on the side a little bit, kick a kid out of school or kick a kid off the bus, or how many freebies do they get? How bad does it get? Because it just seems to me like this is a big problem, and I think we need to address it, because these kids there that, like Sarah said, that want to learn, but if they're afraid and there's all this chaos in their class, how do you learn anything? And then there's kids like me that were a little squirrely, that I didn't want to get in trouble with the teacher. I didn't want to disappoint anybody. I didn't want any of these kind of problems. But if I saw you doing it and you got away with it, pretty soon I might as well give her a shot. And the next thing you know, it just kind of goes. And it just feels to me like some of this feel-good stuff that we keep, and maybe I'm totally wrong. We could talk about it on the side so we can get out of here. But it just seems like it just keeps going more and more and more and more. And it's like, in the meantime, I don't think the level of education is where it used to be. And I think it's our job with a $100 million budget that that's what people expect of us.
Well, can I add to that? Because I think what we're talking about here, we're saying it's a school issue. I would put that back on all of us to say it's a community issue.
It's a nationwide issue.
And it's an issue for all of us to solve together. We're not going to solve it as a school district. We're going to have to solve it as a community.
The other thing too, Mr. Chair, is that, as you said, DJ, education has changed since all of us have gone to school, since I started education, and it has changed every year. And it's got, when I started teaching in 1973, I was excited to have that classroom, and I looked around the room when I walked in my first classroom. I thought, I'm going to put that poster over there to fire them up, and I'm gonna put that poster over there to fire them up, and I'll put that poster over there to fire them up. You know what they think about? A lot of teachers tell me what they think about now, and I've got some children that are in the profession.
Yep.
Let me see, how am I gonna get my kids out of here if a shooter comes in? I had never had to think that, so
You shouldn't have to.
Let me, right, I didn't have to. So education is changing, and it's changing rapidly, and these, you know, those kind of things have changed our whole
I agree.
society. But the other thing I want, to say is that even though it's changed, and COVID had, in my opinion, a lot to do with it, because all of a sudden now, COVID was over 3 years. And these kids, in my opinion, lost 3 years of academics, period. And face-to-face socialization, and lots of social skills, life skills, you name it. And so it isn't gonna change in 1 month, as Sarah said, in 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. It's gonna take us years to not only get our kids back to, secondary kids may never get it back, but hopefully we'll have the smarts to say, okay, K through 3 or 4 through 6 or whatever, that's when we need to pound and to get the kids back on track and in line with their academics.
I agree.
And, but it can't just change, it's not gonna change, in my opinion, and I could be wrong as well, in just a short time. We gotta plug away and plug away and plug away, and our staff, including all of them, bus driver, everybody, is plugging away. I've been able to witness that, and there's gonna be glitches, but we can't give up. We gotta keep plugging away and plugging away,
No, we
all
just
of
need to
us.
support them.
Yeah,
I just
for
like to
sure.
start hearing about the changes that we're making that are gonna go toward that goal. You know, I don't know what those are, but I'm not running the school, and I don't know anything about running schools.
I think one thing that might be beneficial for us as a group, again, all of us having a collective experience of now close to 4 years, if you add us all together, of board experience. You know, restorative practices gets thrown around as a word a lot, or a term a lot. And I think it can be kind of scary. And I think we probably could benefit from learning more about how that integrates into the overall plan. Because while I'm with you, you know, if you have a chronic or, you know, basically a recidivist that's causing problems in a school, we've got to have the courage as a district to cut bait and protect the other kids and teachers that are here. But on the other hand, as somebody who, because of a zero tolerance policy, incurred close to $20,000 in legal bills for my son and contemplated a lawsuit against the city of Brainerd for something that should have never happened, I think that you can take it too far. Based on my own personal experience. So I think it's not as easy as a black and white, here's how you solve it with just this, you know, you use a hammer for a nail, you use the right tool for the right job. But when we put hammers in certain situations where that's all they're looking for are nails, everything's gonna look like a nail to them, and then we take a problem we already had and create a whole different problem that we didn't mean to create. So we've gotta be a little bit more judicious and intelligent about how we approach it, if I may, based on what Director Ward said, because the world isn't the same as the world I grew up in. I just recently republished something I wrote about my 5th grade teacher in Pillager when I was a kid. These ears didn't get this big by accident.
Yeah, I have a lot of good ones around here that.
And like I said in that, I wouldn't trade that for anything. The fact that, you know, I was physically corrected a lot because I had a big mouth, believe it or not. And you can't do that now. We know you can't do that now. I'm not suggesting that we go back to that. I'm suggesting that we figure out what the modern version of that is, and we succor and support it, and we create an environment where it can bloom. And I think as we all learn more, we'll be more effective in doing that. But it starts with supporting our staff, supporting our administrators, and, you know, standing up for what's right. So I appreciate your comments very much, all of you. I think that was a good dialogue. Director Heidman.
Yeah, it wouldn't be a board meeting if I didn't comment on this. It's something I think we should put on the agenda. We need to talk about SEL. I know when I was, and I'm older than dirt, okay? When I was in kindergarten, you know how I got along with other kids? Playtime, recess. Now, sure, things have changed a little bit. I think sometimes we as adults, I don't think kids have changed that much. I think sometimes adults have changed more than kids. But I would like to bring it up now to to you, Chair, and to Dr. Hahn, let's put this on an agenda item. Let's talk about SEL. Let's talk about CRT. Let's talk about some of this stuff. And let's get it out in the open. And let's talk about it and see where we're at and see what we can do as a group. Principals, teachers, we're all in this together. And I've witnessed a lot of amazing things in our schools. These teachers are good. We got some dang good teachers. We got some very good administrators as well.
You know what, I would also like to add that we need to support our students. We need to support our staff and our families, but we need to support our students. And teaching social emotional learning gives them the skills to make good choices. And restorative practices helps them process the mistakes that they're making and then helping them make a wrong a right and create relationships. So we still need, I mean, kids come to school with trauma and we need to continue to research best practices so that we don't re-traumatize our students based on the way that we behave or we respond to their misbehaviors.
I think as a broad topic, this would be a good thing to put on our board retreat agenda, because then we can expand on that. Because I'm a big believer in what Randy was talking about, where we take some of these terms that get thrown around in any number of ways, and maybe CRT is probably the king of those terms, where you can talk to 51 people and get 51 different definitions of what it is. And so the idea that as a collective group, we can have a dialogue and learn together and then come up with our common definition of what it is, allows us to then trickle that out to the community and sort of build a reinforcement around what the six of us and everybody around us is doing to, kind of all those terms, right? To normalize them in some way that people can understand what it means when you say it and when you say it and when you say it. Because right now they watch it on whatever TV network or internet site they see, and it may have nothing to do with what we do here. In fact, I know most of the time it doesn't.
And that's got to be part of our strategic plan as well. We've got to have some of this stuff in our strategic plan. So when people start arguing about, well, we're not doing this, we're doing this, let's go back to the strategic plan. And I told Director Donlinger this, and this was before the election even happened. I said, a strategic plan is going to go a long ways in making our job easier. And he said, how's that? We got a roadmap. We have a roadmap. Teachers have a roadmap. Administration has a roadmap. The community has a roadmap. And if we don't stand by it, then what good was it? Shame on us is right. Shame on us, John. You're right.
And so for the benefit of the community, that's why this group is committed to having board retreats on a periodic basis, yet to be determined how frequent. But the idea is to go into a setting that's less of a business meeting setting where we can get in a room and kick some of this stuff around and put a little bit more framework around how we work together and how we articulate things at the board table. And then what's expected in terms of Dr. Hahn and her staff to support what we're looking for, but also to challenge us on those things as well. So there's good dialogue. I think in a perfect world, we'll be able to knock a lot of this stuff out in these retreat settings. And it's just like the committees. I mean, creating these alternate venues for these kinds of dialogues, I think, is a very healthy and productive thing for not just the six of us, but the people that come after us. Some sooner than others.
Well, I make a motion.
Second.
Marcy, double the bonuses.
Any further discussion?
It's been a long day.
We have a motion to adjourn, seconded. All in favor of adjourning, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion carries. We are adjourned. Thank you.